What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome to episode 17 of C4SVillains. I am your host JB and I am here as always with my co-host Legendy Vash, and we are here with returning guests from the Pop-O-Holics podcast, Chris Conkling. Chris, Vash, thank you guys so much for joining me on this episode.
Thanks for having me back, man. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Oh yeah.
And I appreciate to be back here for episode 17 of
C4SVillains.
Yeah, man, it's absolutely crazy to think we're already at episode 17 at this point. I wish Schnepp was here. I wish I could share this video with him, even though he probably would never see it. But I would love to share it with him and just let him know just how much he meant to me and how much I know he means to all of us here. So man, I just wish he was here to just, experience everything that happened in the last half of MCU Phase 3. I know he would have lost his shit seeing Endgame, watching Valkyrie on a fucking Pegasus, and all of the crazy stuff, Donald Duck being in with the rest of the Avengers. I know he would have loved it, man. Every time I watch those movies, it just makes me really sad knowing that he's not here and that he never got to experience these amazing movies that told stories from shit that he read in comics when he was a kid. So, man, I love doing this show. I love that he inspired us to make this show. And we're going to be talking about the MCU Phase 1. And this is just the beginning of our entire Infinity Saga review. We're going to be doing Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3, Part 1, and then Phase 3, Part 2, because Phase 3 has I think almost 11 movies.
11 films.
11 films in Phase 3.
It's a big boy phase.
Yeah, so unless, we don't want the show to be 6 hours long, so we're going to go ahead and split it up. What?
Does the shows of WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier count as Phase 3, right?
They're Phase 4.
Phase 4.
Okay, they're Phase 4. Okay.
Yeah. So before we dive into the movies themselves, what have you guys been watching recently? What have you guys been reading over the past week, 2 weeks? Chris?
So I've been working a lot, so I haven't been watching too much, but I have been watching The Bad Batch on Disney Plus. The show's been airing weekly, so it's been easier to catch than binging anything. But I've really been enjoying it. It for those that don't know, it takes place during a really interesting time within the Star Wars lore. It takes place immediately after Order 66 and in the very early days
literally right after
of the Republic transforming into the Galactic Empire, which is something we've never seen before. We get to see kind of the clone army transition to recruits, which is also something we've never seen before. But it follows this mutated clone squad, Squad 99, the Bad Batch. They all have different skill sets. They're kind of like an A-team clone squad, but it's a lot of fun. I know James hasn't watched it yet, so I don't want to spoil anything. But if you're interested in Star Wars lore, this is a really interesting time period, like I said, that we've never gotten to see, and I highly, highly recommend it.
Yeah, it's on the list. I've also been extremely busy at work, so I haven't had the chance to barely watch anything, but I should have some time tomorrow, and I'll definitely check it out. Go ahead, Vash.
I do want to add to what Chris was saying as well, that if you have been interested, check out Mandalorian, check out Bad Batch, and if you are interested in watching Bad Batch, definitely go back and watch Clone Wars, the anime series, because Bad Batch gives you the different perspective of the clones itself, not from the Jedi, but from the clones itself. So it's very fascinating. It gives you more of an interesting type of perspective of what it was to work for Jedi as well, because these clones and other clones you see speak up and talks about working with a Jedi, like those are like the superiors, the generals and everything. And you get your little Easter eggs of Obi-Wan,
Yeah.
Skywalker and everything like that. So I watched the first 2 episodes, haven't seen episode 3 yet, but like James haven't yet seen it, and since it hasn't been a lot of people speaking about it on the timeline or anything, I don't also want to spoil it or Vash it. So I really want people to watch it, and it's a very good show.
You're leaning into the verb.
Yes, and he has to.
I got to, it's my name, and James and 2 of the people came up with it, so why not, right?
I'm proud of you.
Anything else, Chris, that you've been watching?
That is it. The Bad Batch on a weekly basis.
Okay. Vash?
For me, I binge watch within the past 2 weeks, from last week for my birthday to this week. I binge watched Harley Quinn, the animated series on HBO Max. And I gotta say, I don't know what's with me, but I've been in a bloody mood lately, because I went from Invincible, Harley Quinn, and now I went to Castlevania. So like, what the hell is going on? Because Harley Quinn is bloody as hell. It literally be killing people left and right. Evil villains being killed as well, and literally you see bones, blood, skeletons out there. I'm like, okay, cool. The Joker and Harley Quinn relationship, I gotta give props to the writers. I think like this show, Batman animated series, of course, is one of the top tier writing show for Batman and Joker. But when you involve Harley Quinn and Joker itself, I think this is one of the best. When like not including the comics, but overall TV shows and movies, this is one of the best writing for Harley Quinn and Joker, because it dives into their relationship and dives into the character and to their mindset of how they work. And I love what they did with Harley and Poison Ivy was pretty interesting as well. So I don't want to spoil for anybody that haven't seen it, but I highly suggest for anybody to watch it. I was really entertained by it. Like I was low expectation, definitely, because it's not that because it's animated, but Harley Quinn, she was not an A-list character when she was drawn into the animated show, but then through the years she became so popular, and now with her own show and with HBO Max, I was like, okay, let me check it out, and I love it. I was really entertained by it, and I can't wait for season 3. Season 3 is supposed to be the end of this year, so I can't wait to see what it brings to the table.
Yeah, I love this show too. My wife and I are huge fans of it, and we didn't expect to be initially, but it's
right.
It's kind of a cartoon in the same vein as like Family Guy or The Simpsons or South Park. Like it's an adult-oriented cartoon, just with DC characters. And the best part about that is the writers know exactly the source material that they're working with.
Yes,
and they lean into it, and they're able to make fun of themselves, which is a lot of fun. It's kind of a similar thing to what like Lego Batman did, where Lego Batman, they knew that there were some really ridiculous things within the DC universe, but they rolled with it, right? Harley Quinn just does that on a more adult, gory, raunchy level. But all the voice talent involved with the show, you got some A-list comedians.
They're really amazing.
They're all really funny. Dude, Ron Funches as King Shark kills me. It's so funny.
So funny.
I am shocked.
I'm
shocked with
like
Clayface, because Clayface really shocked me the most, because Clayface, like King Shark, I have read King Shark comics within the Suicide Squad, so I know his character and pretty fascinating. But to see this different side of King Shark in Clayface, I'm actually entertained by Clayface, want to be an actor and everything, like to know the whole different sides, and like about Dr. Psycho in the whole season 1 of why everybody hated him because of the C word and everything. Like it just made so much sense, and this ragtag team to work with Harley Quinn and everything, it like is so insane, but it really makes it work. And you hit on the nose, like those writers know what they have and they make it work. And my favorite episode is I think it was season 2, episode like 5 or 6, where they break fourth wall and they talk to the audience saying that, hey, we know the show's not for everyone, but then they talk to a random dude on the couch saying like, we get it, this show is about women and Harley Quinn, and plus it's in Gotham, but it already has Batman and everything, and already has Joker. But it makes it so I was entertained from that 2-minute segment. I was like, yo, this, like, that's where I really like they know what they have with the show, and the writing is top tier for it.
Yeah, I love Harley Quinn. I have only seen the first season. I need to see the second season. But as far as what I've been watching and reading, the only thing I've been watching recently has been like the MC Phase 1 movies, and I've been trying to read at least one issue of Invincible before bed. So right now I'm on issue 12, and man, like I love having this experience because the order of events is, I don't want to say so different, but it is kind of so different from what the show did. And each one has their own unique thing, which is something Robert Kirkman has been able to do really well. I don't think he sticks the landing every time, like Walking Dead. There's some changes that he's made that's amazing, like adding Daryl Dixon, changing up the Carol character. Those two things were amazing, but there were some choices that he made that weren't great, right? And we'll see what happens with Invincible, but I love how both things have their own way of telling the story in a different order and stuff. So that's been really fun for me to read, and I can't wait to be completely caught up on Invincible, so I'm completely ready for season 2. Have you been reading it at all, Chris?
I haven't. My 2 trades are still in their plastic wrap on my bookshelf because I know they're going to go up.
Chris,
but
facts.
We should be like that. We should be like this together and not read it, so we can experience by watching it together. Because like my co-host here, just said, fuck this shit, I'm gonna read it. Like, I want to experience the fun, like the fun theories, the fun try to see like, yo, what happened? What happened here?
Yeah,
don't care.
They're still gonna change things in season 2.
I don't mind. I'm like James. I don't mind getting spoiled, as my fellow co-hosts of Pop-O-Holics know. Like, I'm the first out of the 3 of us to always spoil myself when a new movie's coming out, especially comic book movies. But I'm a terrible comic book fan, guys, because I have to confess I haven't even finished season 1 of Invincible. I still have 2 episodes to watch. I know what happens because of all the memes. There's no avoiding them.
Oh my god!
But I still
listen, Mark. Listen.
Yeah, it's so funny.
You should. It's so good.
I definitely plan on finishing it. But James, you're absolutely right when it comes to like a creator, changing certain things within an adaptation. The benefit to being involved in your own adaptation is you get a second chance or a second pass at a piece of art, and you get to tweak things that you maybe would have tweaked the first time around. But like you said, to varied success. So I like that Robert Kirkman's involved in all of his adaptations. It's good. And I'm excited to see what he does with the Invincible cartoon. I think he's restructured it in a way, at least from the way I've heard him talk about it, he's restructured it in a way that he thinks makes more sense for the cartoon,
Yeah, for something that has issues that comes out every week, I definitely see how the comic plays out, and it works great, right? But for a TV series to keep people invested, this is a much better way to tell the story, because from my knowledge, Omni-Man doesn't kill the Guardians until like volume 2 of the Invincible comic, right? So we don't actually see that happen until volume 2. So for the TV series, and much like myself, and I know a bunch of other people, once you saw Omni-Man kill the Guardians of the end of the first episode, everyone I know was completely hooked and locked in.
Yeah.
Right? So it was the best decision for that first episode, right? I think it was the best decision possible.
Definitely.
Because in the comic, the first interaction with Mark after he gets his superpowers, he does interact with Titan, but he gets into a fight with one of the Mauler twins first, and then that's how he meets the teen team. So it's interesting how it completely changed up, because as you know, in the beginning of the cartoon, we see the Mauler twins versus the Guardians. So I'm on issue 12. I haven't seen the Guardians yet. So it's gonna it's very interesting how it varies between the two, and I love it, man.
I'm interested to hear which you prefer once you finish the whole 144 issue run, and once the show's finished, you'll be able to discern like which you think is a better flow for the story. But that's pretty cool. Yeah,
it's gonna be really fun when we talk about it in Villains when I'm done.
If season 2 hasn't been announced by the summer, I'm gonna say this now. If seasons hasn't been announced by the end of summer,
I thought it was already announced. I thought season 2 and 3 was already
date?
Meaning, yes, release date wise, like if they don't say that it will be next year spring, if they say like 2022 fall, then I would definitely start reading. But if they had announced it by then, I would just start reading immediately. If they said next year spring or winter, then I would like, okay, cool, I can wait. But they said summer, spring, like, okay, that's too far. Then I'll start reading.
Yeah,
Has
man.
it been difficult to find omnibuses, like physical omnibuses of the
Yes.
book?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
paperbacks are pretty easy to get, but if you want a hardcover, good luck, bro.
I'm sure it's impossible. I'm sure they're pretty expensive right now, but
Oh yeah, because I
great
mean,
news for everyone that already has them.
yeah, right. Because the paperbacks cost like $40 a piece.
Wow.
Yeah, and I actually
but
think
I don't want
mean, in terms of
paperback.
compendiums,
Yeah.
so I think the third compendium is like $50. But I mean, I don't care. I'm gonna buy them because I'm so invested in the story. But I bought them digitally because it's just easier that way for me to just like if Mia drives, I can just read a couple issues like while I'm in the
Right.
car. So I prefer to do it that way, and then I'll buy the compendiums and keep them in the plastic so I never have to open them.
Good idea.
Yeah. All right, so let's
a
get
good
into
idea.
it. Let's get into the MCU Phase 1. In Phase 1, we had Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, the first Avenger, and of course Marvel's The Avengers. Phase 1 was pretty solid in my eyes. I absolutely love Phase 1. Iron Man is still in my top 4 or top 5 like favorite MCU movies ever to this day. So for them to start off so strong means so much to me. I love Iron Man. I love Robert Downey Jr. in this role. The first Thor movie was a lot better for me this time around, and I'll go into those details when I get into it. But Phase 1 was really strong in my opinion. This was a great start for the MCU. And those first 5 films were all distributed by Paramount. And then we didn't get to Disney until Marvel's The Avengers, which is so poetic when you get to that movie of such a scale. So, Chris, I want to start with you. What is your general thoughts on the MCU Phase 1?
Oh, I mean, it's hugely important in cinema history, and for where we end up in Phase 3 with films like, Infinity War and Avengers Endgame. Like without this first phase, without the success of this first phase, the entire superhero genre probably just would have died off, to be perfectly honest. And that's all resting on the shoulders of Iron Man being a success, obviously, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, this is a set of strong movies. One of the things you'll find with like the MCU films is like there's a certain bar that they always hit. One of my co-hosts on Pop-O-Holics is always talking about this, Christian, how like MCU has a standard, and even for the films that are bad, and you probably don't feel this way about Iron Man 3. We're not talking about that this week. But even for the films that are like quote unquote bad, they're still entertaining, whereas like you'll have other superhero films that are bad and you never want to watch ever again. But with my personal opinion and my personal experience with the MCU, they're all really good. This is quality superhero entertainment.
Yeah, Vash, what are your general thoughts on MCU Phase 1?
Phase 1. I love it. As a kid, I grew up with the comics, grew up with the Avengers, Spider-Man cartoons and everything. And when I first heard Iron Man on screen, and at that, I think the same year of Iron Man, I think it was the Batman Dark Knight, right?
Yes, The Dark Knight came out the same summer.
Okay.
Like a month or two
same
later.
summer and everything. So yeah. So Phase 1 as a whole, like seeing Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, Captain America, First Avenger, Thor, like those are not really A-list heroes from the MCU at the time. Like A-list were Wolverine, the X-Men, Spider-Man, like those were A-list. And to see characters that is a mix of A, B, and C characters of A-list into a movie, like I just gotta give props to Kevin Feige and the team that have faith in Robert Downey Jr. in these actors to pick up these mantle of these roles. And probably while they were filming, they were making fun like, oh wow, like these look like costumes, but seeing it in post-production and seeing it on the big screen of how proud these people must have been. And now 10 years, 20 years later, and now probably 40 years later, once their kids watching, be like, damn, dad, that was you back then. Like any parent, any person watching Phase 1, Phase 2, Phase 3 must be hella proud to see what they've done, because me still watching Iron Man, I still get hella proud when he says I'm Iron Man at the end of the scene, which we'll talk about in a few. But like seeing Captain America, the first Avenger, like Captain America, like the Boy Scout, the perfect soldier that people always compare of Captain America, about Steve Rogers and Superman, like who is the more Boy Scout nerd like
Yeah.
that. So like you actually see these characters on screen, and the whole panel shot of the Avenger shot as well at the end of the film, like just seeing what they have done in a phase one, to know like that is a big accomplishment. And Chris said it perfectly, like that's a big, huge type of cinematic accomplishment within the 100 years of film making. And that's something that can't wait to see what else they do within the next phase 12, probably within the next 40 years, or they can probably restart, who knows. But it's just insane to know what Kevin Feige has done, and much praise to him. And I can't wait to see what else more they bring to the table.
Yeah, Vash, you're absolutely right. In hindsight, kind of trying to put ourselves back in the mindset that we were in 2008 or 2009, 2010, when these movies were coming out. You look at that roster of characters, having seen movies like X-Men and Spider-Man succeed in the box office, and you're going, how is this even gonna Captain America? How is that gonna play internationally? Like, who is gonna want to see that movie outside of the United States? How is Thor possibly going to exist in the same world as a Tony Stark? Like, you have this character that is based in Norse mythology with magic, and then you start a universe with Tony Stark, who's very grounded and tech based. Like, before we saw Thor, there were who could have guessed that these films were going to be as successful as they were? I certainly didn't think they were going to be as successful as they were.
Me neither.
It's really amazing. It's quite a feat what Kevin Feige and his team was able to accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. You can tell like how much planning went into making this entire universe. There's something that happens in the first Thor movie that we'll talk about once we get there. There's something that happens and it's so subtle, and I'm like, was Kevin Feige planning this whole time? And again, we'll get into it, but Vash, go ahead and say what you're going to say, because I want to dive into Iron Man.
Yeah. So my last thoughts about the phase one accomplishment is to know that what James would lead into Kevin Feige, like to think of a cinematic universe of movies, like these type of things you would do in a comic book, things like this, like, okay, let's tie this type of issue with this issue, let's go like into the Spider-Verse. But he thought bigger, like, hey, let's do this in a movie. Like, I wonder if there's some type of interview out there. If there is, please guys, just send me the link, because I would love to see the way he spoke to the head people at Marvel, Paramount, like, hey, I got this idea, let's do this. I think it worked. Like, for you to convince people with a budget of money to like, hey, let's do this, what has been done in the comics, what has been done now in the MCU. Like, there's other studios, there's other type of TV shows that now try to copy what they're doing. Like, that's a huge accomplishment, because now you have a formula that people are trying to copy. aka DCU is really failing at it. But just to know that people want to copy you, that means you did such a great homework that everyone wants to copy your homework, and that is an accomplishment.
Even though they copy it in the most wrong way possible.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah, definitely.
Marvel Studios does differently, and what they've always been successful with, is that they've always focused on the movie in front of them. Kevin Feige's mentality has always been, or at least was during phase one, if we get to the Avengers, I consider that a great success, but it's not guaranteed, So they weren't planning 10 films out like the Dark Universe or from Universal or something like that, which flopped in the first go round with The Mummy.
I felt bad.
But they were literally just trying to make the best movie that they possibly could with what was in front of them at the time. And because of that, they were successful, and they were actually able to get to the Avengers. And then that just exploded in popularity,
Yeah, so let's talk about that first movie, the movie that started it all. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, Iron Man, and like Vash alluded to, like, it was a struggle to accept Robert Downey Jr. in this role in the beginning.
Yeah.
Jon Favreau fought really, really hard to get Robert Downey Jr. in this role, and now we're to a point where we can't imagine anyone else as this character, right? Like, eventually they have to reboot this franchise at some point, whether it's like 50 years down the road. At some point it has to happen, but who do you get that's better in this role and a lot of other roles that we're going to talk about in the entire Infinity Saga that's going to be better than these actors. So it's going to be very interesting. So Chris, I want to start with you, and I want to get your positives on the first film that started it all, Iron Man.
I completely agree with you. Like, the success of this movie is contingent on Robert Downey Jr. Like, how well is he able to convince us that he's Tony Stark? And I think Jon Favreau saw something in him that resonated with the character that he was trying to put to film. Robert Downey Jr., in and out of rehab, like, he was essentially blacklisted from Hollywood. Like, no, like you said, nobody wanted to hire him. But because of those life experiences, the character of Tony Stark, who's an alcoholic, who has problems with addiction, who's a narcissist, like, I think those things kind of resonated with RDJ and allowed him to embody that character better than anybody else could have been. So,
Facts.
these difficult trials that he had to go through early on in life led him to this moment and to this casting. And that's why it's so successful, because he embodies this person so well. And the reason Iron Man works is because the for the first time, unlike with like the X-Men movies, Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man did this a little bit, but first and foremost, Marvel's always focused on character, right? Convince us that we like who's under the mask, right? Convince us that we have fun being around Tony Stark. So when he puts on the suit, we're enjoying the whole thing, and that's what Marvel's done across the board, starting in phase 1 and so forth. They've always helped us to fall in love with the person. The mask is supplementary, and it works, man. Like, that's why this movie works so well.
Yeah, it's such a great film. Like, I love the casting of Robert Downey Jr. I love the score of this movie. I find myself listening to this score a lot, especially after I watch it. It's like, all right, now I need this to feel motivated, like while I'm editing or some shit. I think the design of the suit's amazing. Like, they took... It's right off the page, man. Like, it looks so amazing and modern. That's the other thing. Like, they brought this Iron Man suit and made it modern, and it looks amazing. They did such a great job explaining the arc reactor and how he was able to make it even smaller, and just to play up the genius of Tony Stark. They had him do it in a cave with scrap parts from missiles and a couple of other things. So it was great to see that, to play up the genius of Tony Stark, and I absolutely love that. Terrence Howard was awesome as Rhodey. There is an alternate universe where I wish we got to see him as Rhodey throughout the entire series. But
Agreed.
I mean, when Don Cheadle takes over, Don Cheadle's fucking amazing.
I heard that Terrence Howard was actually the highest paid actor on Iron Man 1. He was paid the most.
Yeah, and he wanted the same thing for Iron Man 2, and it's like...
And they were like, oh,
yeah,
no.
but Downey made the movie, bro, so...
Yeah.
Can't do that. But, yeah, man, I absolutely love this movie. Paul Bettany as the voice of Jarvis. How amazing is that? Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. Like, they just found these amazing casting directors to find all of these incredible actors to bring these characters to life. Who plays... the antagonist again? I can't remember.
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges, right. Jeff Bridges is amazing in this movie as Obadiah Stane. So they've done such an incredible job with this film. We'll dive in a little bit deeper. But Vash, what are some of your positives from the film?
Iron Man, one of my favorite cartoons that, like it's a nice hammer sound, the dun, 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 dun. I will always love that beat, even the beginning when he was in the cave. Knowing the scene, this movie was made in 2007, came out in 2008. So post-production and everything, you still watch until today. The CG, the VFX, and everything still holds up.
Still hold up, yeah.
They do, yeah.
When he first put in that suit and the suit comes on, and I'm just watching like a freaking fan, because I think I was 11, 12 years old. I did not know at the time when I was a kid watching it. I did not know much about Robert Downey Jr. Past. I did not know much about his character as who he is as a person. What happened?
Bro, that makes me feel old that you were 11 and 12 years old when you saw this movie.
Right?
From what I can remember,
from what I
can remember, because I was like, I think I was like in beginning of high school, I believe, or like ending of middle school, from what I can believe. But just seeing Iron Man from whatever in the comics, because as much as people call him at the time he was a B-lister, and to know that character that I read in the comics, and to know, damn, he looks just like him. The goatee and everything, the smart ass, wisecracking, the whole billionaire and philanthropist, the likes to sleep with a lot of women and everything like that. I'm like, that's Tony Stark. Like, he acts like him and everything. I'm like, yo. And when he does the whole showboat and they gets the whole smoke in the bag, I'm like, that's Jericho. I'm like, okay, cool. You are a little cocky motherfucker, but I
love that scene.
Yeah, the film does a great job of showing us all of his flaws, like at the very beginning. It makes the character arc stronger by the end.
Oh yeah.
And then it feels so relatable, and I was so entertained by the film, like, as a whole. Like, to me, that's a film I believe a Phase 1 as a whole I watched the most, and then Avengers is the second one, but Iron Man is just so heartwarming to me in my heart as a film, because he's one of my favorite characters from the Marvel universe, not from MCU, but Marvel Comics, and to see him on screen done so well by Robert Downey Jr. and what James said earlier, like, it's hard to replace him. But props to anybody that does replace him in the future and does a better job or does a good job as Sam, because it will happen down the road when Marvel MCU does a whole crossover, restarted the universe. Who knows what the hell's gonna happen there? So, but this movie, I enjoy the hell out of it.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments from the film is just when he's sitting there watching the news and he's tuning the gauntlet, and then he's like, all right, I've just had enough, and he puts on the suit.
That's a great scene.
And then just flies off and just wrecks balls on all of these terrorists, bro. It is such an impactful scene, because you see this person that was so selfish, right? And then he's been through all of these different things. He comes back home and realizes that he has to make a difference, right? Like, his weapons are now out there. They're killing families, and he has to do something about it. And just the fact that he has that internal sense of justice just proves how much of a true hero Tony Stark really is. And he didn't even realize it. So it's this great, like, character discovery of who he's actually meant to be. And I love that in this film. I love that shot where he takes the tank round and then he just gets up, shoots the small rocket, and just blows up the tank.
That's a trailer shot
just walks.
right there.
Oh my God. The perfect trailer shot, right? I absolutely loved it.
I love when he turns around. And just walks it off, like, so slow, and the explosion in the back. I'm like, yeah, I know what you're doing here. Like, you have to make him look like a badass here.
Yeah, man, it's so incredible. Like, what were some of you guys' like other favorite moments from the film?
I love his first flight moments.
I want to add to the scene.
I think that
that's one of the scene. That is one of the scene I was going to add to what James was saying. That right after he flew and did the tanks and everything, Rhodey called him like, hey, so where are you at? What you doing? Like, I'm just here doing nothing, just getting some groceries and everything. And then Rhodey acts like, oh, because we're having a little bogey that's not supposed to be here, and we're about to shoot him and everything. And then Tony gets in trouble and everything, and it calls back Rhodey. And I love the chemistry and the comedy. Like, yo, Rhodey, just saying, that's actually me. Can you tell your boys to not shoot me and everything? So I love the comedy between them two, because it feels like what James said, like, he has that justice as a character, but he's still Tony Stark, who has the comedy that wants to be snarky, that wants to be cocky, like, hey, I should shoot up a whole tank. I just, to shoot up the whole guns and everything. But then I'm gonna still lie to my best friend. So I just love the comedy just between those two.
He's definitely true to himself, without a doubt. And I dig that about Tony Stark. And that plays into the final line of the movie where he says that, I am Iron Man, which is totally like a subversion of expectations based on, what we had seen from superhero movies in the past. But the scene that I just mentioned, his first flight, is when he's kind of testing out the components of the suit for the first time. And then he finally gets into the Mark II, that like purely silver armor. And just takes it for a flight around the house, sees how high he can go into the atmosphere, all that stuff. But James mentioned the scene where he's sitting on the couch, kind of tweaking his gauntlet. What I really like about this movie, and what I kind of miss about like the newer MCU movies, is that there was still a marriage of practical effects and visual effects. There are a lot of scenes in these films, and I know the suits were kind of uncomfortable for Robert Downey Jr. He had to wear these big torso suits.
That's
and
the
his
gig,
legs. That is the gig. This gig made him. So I do appreciate that they're able to make it easier on him, but I think there was something that was lost by ditching the practical suits that he had to wear. Because seeing it in reality, like, you can tell, it makes it real. It makes it grounded. With Iron Man, you felt like this was a dude getting into a mech suit and fighting terrorists.
Yeah, man. Like, I love exactly what you just said, because that immediately made me think of, there's a lot of scenes in Captain America Civil War where he's moving and you can tell that there's just some tracking issues with mapping the CGI to
That
Robert Downey Jr.
floating head syndrome.
Yeah, so it's like having the chest piece and everything, like it brings, like you said, a sense of realism to it, that this guy is actually wearing this suit. And they did that for Iron Man 1 and Iron Man 2, and I believe in Iron Man 3, that's kind of where they started to switch more to CGI, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But I mean, I get it. It's technically easier to do it with CGI. The different changes that the suit makes at times is a lot easier to do it with CGI, so I get it. But again, you lose that kind of that sense of realism in the film. How do you guys feel about the chemistry between Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow as Tony and Pepper?
Oh, it's fucking electric,
For me, it worked.
dude. Like, they're one of the best superhero couples on film, I think.
Facts.
and the best part about it is we're not only limited to like a trilogy or something. We get to see their relationship evolve and have peaks and valleys over the course of the 23 Marvel films. So by the time we get to Endgame, it's even more heartbreaking. But yeah, it's an excellent relationship.
Yeah, Vash?
It's entertaining because I think in the beginning, or when he came back, he was sleeping with a chick, and then Pepper had to, hey, here's your clothes, dry clean and everything. If you want some food, you can have your own car, take wherever you want. Knowing that who's Tony, she still care for who he was, and like, I find that such a beautiful relationship. Like, knowing who Tony is, knowing his backstory, knowing that he's a playboy, sleeping with a lot of women, but she still takes care of him at the time. And then, like Chris brought up, like throughout the movies, they grew those feelings. Like, Tony was like, yo, the only person who could take care of me is you. Like, I don't even know he even said throughout the film, like, I don't even know my own social security. You do. So you're the only person who could take care of me. Like, how don't you even know your own social security?
He's a billionaire man-child.
Yep.
That's a fact.
Oh man, like I also love their relationship. Like you said, Chris, I think they're one of the best like movie couples, if I'm being honest, because you see a lot of movie couples that don't really have chemistry on screen. It's just that we're supposed to like it because it's two hot people on screen, right? And that's usually what the studio is hoping on. It's like, oh, there's two hot people, they're supposed to be together, so it doesn't matter if they actually have chemistry as long as they look hot together, right?
Nothing against these other couples in Phase 1, but they're certainly better than Edward Norton and Liv Tyler.
Oh yeah, please stop.
Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
I
can't say Peggy and Cap. They're also excellent, but like,
oh yeah,
the Pepper Tony relationship is one of the strongest.
Yeah, because I mean, she truly, and much like Peggy does for Steve, but Pepper completely acknowledges who Tony is and loves him for it. All of his flaws, all of the good things, she accepts it all. And I absolutely love that. And when she's talking to the reporter that Tony just had sex with, it's just like, yeah, I do everything Mrs. Stark requires, even eventually taking out the trash. Will that be all? It's so good. Like, Gwyneth's like delivery of that line was so clean and just gets the point across. I absolutely love that. Their chemistry is great. Jeff Bridges, again, as Obadiah Stane, it really hurts. Like, once you get to the end of the film, well, towards the end of the film, and you realize what his motivations are, that he's been the one selling these weapons to whoever will buy them, you genuinely feel this sense of betrayal from him. And that's something, again, that a lot of films can't do, in my opinion, to get me to actually care, right? I just saw Mortal Kombat. I just saw like Spiral as well. Like, these are films that wants you to care about characters, and I don't. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's something that's really unique when you can get me to care about these characters as people, for me to care about them as superheroes. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
I really like Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane. I mean, I like Jeff Bridges in general, you know, and I have a lot of fun with this performance, but I do think that this Marvel problem starts at the very beginning. And the Marvel problem that I'm talking about is like our heroes constantly fighting villains that are just like the evil version of themselves.
Yeah.
And also the Marvel films in the third act just being like giant battles. But that doesn't mean I don't enjoy them. You know, I still very much love these movies, but I do think it's something that like the Marvel movies have had a hard time overcoming over the course of the 20, still 20, is it still 23 films? I can't even keep track anymore.
Yeah, 23.
Over the course of the 23 films that we've seen so far. But I really enjoyed it when I first saw it. But I do think this is like one thing that they've struggled with over the course of all their movies.
Yeah. Vash, let me get your if you have any negatives and final thoughts on Iron Man.
Negatives I don't have. Like honestly, just movie that to me is like a solid like 9.5, 10 out of 10 for me, because it's like what Chris and James brought up, like Jeff Bridger, like Obadiah Stane, when I saw that he was in the movie, like I know that he's gonna be trimmed because I read the comics, so I know that was gonna happen. But I'm like, how they're gonna do it? Like, how are they gonna do the reveal? Like, because in the comics, usually the Mandarin or Obadiah Stane is the one that kills his father, or the one that does, you know, these type of things to Tony. So I'm curious to know how they're gonna do it. I'm like, okay, he's the one that got him trapped in the cave over there in Asia, Europe, I forgot where it was. So
Iraq,
to know,
right?
like, okay,
Middle
cool.
East,
Yeah,
Middle East.
yeah, somewhere in
Yeah.
the Middle East. Yeah,
Yeah. So like to know about that Stain, it really was entertaining. It sucks that he got one shot, like he got done in the movie. I was hoping that he'll probably get, you know, like survive at the end, like have him as Iron Man 2 or Iron Man 3 type of villain in the future.
Another
but that's a whole
Marvel
different
problem.
conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah, like they could have done something with him, because Obadiah Stane has always been a rival in Tony's life in the comics and everything. Like, yeah, they don't always kill him off, so I was hoping that they would do something with him. But to see Iron Killmonger, I think that was his
Ironmonger or
The
that was
Ironmonger.
Ironmonger, yeah.
Ironmonger, right? So like that was dope to see from the comics, even though in the comics it looks a lot better. But to see in the movie, it was a bit like much bigger type of mecha. But like, okay, cool. But the way Tony, like, it shows that what Chris brought up earlier, like the way we see these characters more of a hero, but the way we sometimes forget that these people are also scientists. Where Tony was smart of how to kind of defeat Obadiah Stane by using the arc reactor, where we kind of forget that these heroes on screen also have a human side of background, where Bruce Banner is the Hulk, but also as a scientist, like stuff like this. I wish, or maybe MCU is improving down the years, and they're probably talking about it, but that is an MCU problem. And I'm happy that we got that in the first movie, that we see the scientist and the hero side of both Tony Stark / Iron Man.
Yeah, and how many times have you
So
seen
I guess
Iron
that was
Man?
my negative, if you want to put that.
How many times have you seen it?
Damn. From what I counted in my phone, and I've had 55 to 80 times. I don't have a rough number, but I have that range of 55 to 80 times of watching Iron Man. Like I said, it's one of my favorite films, and seeing it on screen, the score, like that's one also of MCU problems, that they don't know how to keep the composers and like have a great score very consistently throughout their films.
I totally
But
agree. Like
definitely Iron Man I've
theming,
seen.
theming is a huge issue in
Yeah.
the MCU. Like
That's
the Avengers theme is really the only theme that carries through between movies.
Yeah.
yes.
And there is an Iron Man 3 theme that technically shows up in Age of Ultron. But
Didn't notice it.
it's when he's suiting
Of
up
course,
in the Hulk.
I was like waiting for something.
But
That's
yeah,
the
that's
only
definitely also
thing-
been like a problem over the course of the films.
Yeah. So Chris, any
I agree, like,
negatives
that's the
and
only
final
thing-
thoughts? What were you saying? What were you saying, Vash? There
I
might
was
be a
gonna say,
delay.
like, that's the only thing that, yeah, which I've noticed that there is a delay on my end, but that's the only thing that with the DC they have more of a score over them, because they keep the composer and actually keep entertaining in that aspect. But it sucks that Marvel,
they?
hopefully they've been improving that, and that's the only thing they have over them. I say like that's very consistent score wise.
I disagree, but interesting.
type of department.
Okay.
But Chris,
Chris, any negatives and final thoughts?
Really, just the Marvel problem that I spoke about. Our heroes battling larger evil versions of themselves. I know we're not talking about this movie, but Ant-Man is like very similar to this movie in the way that it's kind of mapped out. But yeah, this is Kevin Smith calls this movie a perfect movie, and just despite its problems, I absolutely adore this movie. It's crazy to say that it's not. It's probably like my third favorite movie in Phase 1. But it's crazy to say that considering how many times I've seen it.
In Phase 1, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. For me, I don't necessarily have a negative. It's more of a nitpick, like we already talked about. It's just the Marvel problem, right? Where it
doesn't ruin the movie.
Yeah, at all. You just have a bigger version that's the opposite of the hero. And then again, like I also hate that they kill the villains every time as well. Like I feel like there's a missed opportunity to put these villains in prison for future movies, right? Like Justin Hammer's in prison, so I would love to get to see that, right?
Maybe he comes back in Armor Wars.
I really hope so. I feel like there would be a missed opportunity if he didn't show up in Armor Wars. But yeah, the first Iron Man movie, it's probably my fourth favorite of the entire Infinity Saga. I absolutely love this movie. The acting, the score, the VFX, absolutely everything is on point. And I fucking love this movie. So let's move on to The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. I really like this movie. I'll go first.
I'm glad you do, James.
Yeah, I really like this movie. I haven't seen it in years, if I'm being honest, and then I watched it today, and I'm like, man, this movie is not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but man, is it fun. Like, Edward Norton really has, like, a grasp of what Bruce Banner, a version of what Bruce Banner needed to be. And then I also like the Hulk that they created. I have a preference. I prefer the Hulk design that we have now that they put in with Ragnarok and beyond. That's my preference. But I felt like this design was really good, in my opinion. Thunderbolt Ross, I thought he was a great addition into the MCU to be exactly what he was supposed to be from the comics. I feel like they pulled Thunderbolt Ross from the page directly into this movie. Liv Tyler as Betty, it literally could have been anyone. But for me, the standouts are Tim Roth and Edward Norton in this movie. These guys are absolutely incredible. Watching them play off of each other in the scenes that they are in together, I think it's really great. The fight between Hulk and Abomination at the end is fucking awesome, and I can't wait to see the Abomination again. Like, we have to assume that the Abomination is in the raft somewhere.
She's it's already confirmed the Abomination is going to be in She-Hulk.
Fuck yeah, that's right. They did say Tim Roth was going to be there.
Yeah, they have.
So that's going to be awesome. Much like Terrence Howard, in some alternate reality, I want to see those movies with Ed Norton, because
I don't know if they'd be as good, dude.
I was just going to say that, right? Because Mark Ruffalo is fucking insanely good as Bruce Banner, but there's still a part of me that just wants like an alternate universe with Ed Norton. But I really love this movie. There's the college scene where you get to see Tim Roth's character with the super soldier serum fighting against the Hulk. So I thought that was really cool, because that was the first time in the MCU that we actually saw a person with the super soldier serum. So I thought that was really cool. It's not until he gets more injections that it mutates him into the Abomination. So I thought that was really cool. Yes, seeing Lou Ferrigno at the university, that was fucking amazing. I love Lou Ferrigno. But I had a really fun time watching this movie. It's not one of the MCU films that I rewatch a bunch of times, but man, rewatching it today, it was so much fun. What are your thoughts, Chris?
This film is what I refer to as the redheaded stepchild of the MCU. It's literally the only film in Phase 1 that was produced by Universal. Every other film was made by Paramount at that point. So literally it is the most outside of everything else that they made during Phase 1. But I was so excited to see Robert Downey Jr. show up in the end credits scene of this movie. Like, they had positioned to us a promise at the end of Iron Man 1 with Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, saying that he's here to talk to Tony Stark about the Avengers Initiative. And as a comic book fan at that point, you're just like, I don't know if this is possible, but I'm geeking out over it. Like let a 20-year-old boy dream at that point, you know? But then getting to the end of the Incredible Hulk and going, oh, okay, so they're really going for this. Like, this might be a thing. Just got me even more hyped. But like you said, dude, some of the best parts of this movie are definitely Thunderbolt Ross and the Abomination, Tim Roth interacting with each other, getting the first glimpses of the
his name was Blonsky or something like that.
Emil Blonsky is the character's name. Yeah, but they're some of the strongest parts of this film. I liked Edward Norton as Bruce Banner up until the Avengers, when we saw that there could be a better Bruce Banner, you know?
Yeah.
But this movie's fun. Like you said, this is the movie I've probably seen the least out of all of Phase 1. I've probably seen it like 10 to 15 times, and that's crazy to say that, like, that's the movie that I've seen the least, and I've still seen it 10 to 15 times. But coming off of Ang Lee's Hulk, you're absolutely right. This is a stronger Hulk design. Like, I enjoyed this design way more than the Ang Lee version of the Hulk. It was a fun movie, man. It's not the best. I would actually, man, is this worse than Thor: The Dark World? I think, in my personal opinion, I think it would be at the bottom of the MCU tier list for me.
Interesting.
But it's still fun. Like I said, there's a bar that the Marvel movies hit where, like, they're not great, but, like, you'll still watch them if they're on, you know?
Yeah. Vash, what are some of your positives from the film?
Sorry, you just coming mid chewing. Incredible Hulk. I was shocked this film had Abomination when I was watching it. I was like, okay, we're doing Abomination from the comics. Like, okay, so this is happening. But to see that actually, like, Hulk done well from what Chris said, like, the previous film, the 2003 version, I think, or 2001 was, like, okay, this is way better than that, because I hated that film with a passion. Like, oh my God, that film was garbage. To see this, like, Edward Norton did an amazing job. Like, I was so entertained by it. I'm like, okay, I came to see you. And then to see what happened at the end of the film where Tony Stark was there, and to see Thunderbolt Ross, like, hey, I got a guy and everything. I need help and everything. So to see the connection of Incredible Hulk with Iron Man, I'm like, okay, this is much bigger. And then to see what Chris brought up, like, okay, there's a different Hulk from what happened in Avengers, which we'll talk about much later. I'm like, okay, there's a different version of Hulk. I would have liked to see Edward Norton. How would he have the chemistry within the other Marvel characters in the MCU? Because this would have been very fascinating to see how would have been as a group together. Like, imagine Edward Norton with Thor, Edward Norton with Captain Marvel, with, like, all these other characters, that how would he react? But, you know, that's a what if universe. But I just love the film. How many times have I seen it? Let's say less than 20 times. I don't think I'm like Chris, having it in the lower tier. I actually did enjoy it for what it was. Having seen it in the recent years, like James, probably the last time I saw it was like 2016, 2015 was on when it was on TV, when I was scrolling. But it's an entertaining film for what it is. Can't wait to see Abomination come back. That's what I'm excited for. And can't wait to see how it looks from 2008, 2009 to what 2023, 2024. The VFX and CG is gonna look.
Probably gonna
like,
be
how much are they gonna improve? Well,
Probably
you know,
like
I don't
year.
know.
Yeah.
Hopefully
next year, if that's fine, cool. But to see how's it gonna look for his character,
that's a huge difference.
CG, that's a huge difference. Like, that's literally a good 15 years later. So I can't wait to see what it does.
One of the really cool things that happens, like, in the umbrella of the MCU, is that the films retroactively get better, you know, based on, like, where we learn the characters go. So, like you, Vash, I'm super interested to see what they end up doing with the Abomination and how that affects everyone's opinion of the Incredible Hulk. You know, like, does that retroactively make the Incredible Hulk a better movie? Who's to say? We'll find out. Because really, it only has two ties, really, to the rest of the MCU. And that's Thunderbolt Ross, because he appears multiple times in other films. And then there's a brief mention of the Hulk destroying Harlem in the Avengers.
Right.
But, like, outside of those things, you could not watch this movie and still 100% understand who the Hulk is in all of his other appearances.
For sure.
Yep.
Like another character that I would love to see on She-Hulk is the leader, right? Like we
Yeah.
got the tease of the leader at the end. Like, what's he been doing? Where's he been this entire time? You know what I mean? So I feel like the leader is such a great antagonist to the Hulk because you have ultimate strength versus ultimate intelligence, right?
Right.
And I love how they butt heads in the comics and in the animated series. I always loved seeing that stuff. I think this movie is a lot of fun. I can't wait to see the updated Abomination design. I think that's gonna be dope. I don't know if I care to see Betty again. I don't know if we need that character. I don't know if she actually serves a purpose in this universe anymore. Because I mean, why didn't he go see her this entire time? Like where's she been? You know, and I guess it really doesn't matter. So I already didn't care much for the chemistry between them in the movie in general. And it's like, yeah, I don't miss it. When I was rewatching the film, I was like, oh yeah, look, there's Betty.
I forgot.
I think she would serve a purpose. This is just me spitballing. If Thunderbolt Ross turned into Red Hulk already, then she might serve a purpose because knowing that her ex-lover and her father now are both Hulks. So I'm curious to know that might serve a purpose because that has happened in the comics. But would it serve a purpose in the MCU? Most likely not. Would people care? Hell no. But in the topic, in the spitballing department, she might serve a purpose if that was the case. If Thunderbolt Ross, turned into Red Hulk already behind the scenes, and then we see them, and that's when Betty Ross. Would it be the same actress? Who knows? I don't really care though.
Yeah, I couldn't care less if I'm being honest. Do you guys have any negatives for the film? Chris, I want to start with you.
Negatives for this movie.
Do it?
So this movie, like I said, out of all the MCU films, this still feels like it has ties to previous superhero movies before Iron Man. Like the way the story is constructed, there's like a green hue over the course of the whole film that they've used. It's like a green tint on the film.
Yeah.
It just feels like a movie of that era, almost like a Michael Bay type of film. Like it has similar lighting to like a Transformers movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, I see that.
So it does kind of feel the most disconnected, like I said. But again, like there's really not a lot to hate about these movies. They're still fun. They're still a lot of fun to watch,
Yeah. Vash, any negatives on The Incredible Hulk?
If I have any negatives, I can't really say because it sucks to say, but Chris brought it up. If you take out this movie out of the pocket, the movie's MCU already did the purpose because the actor Edward Norton is not really that important since he didn't continue the role. So my whole fiance never watched the film, but because that's not the same actor. So for her to watch it doesn't really give a purpose, like you mentioned. Okay, she doesn't watch it, she doesn't need to because it's not the same actor. But the film is what it is. If you actually give it a score, I'll give it a 7 out of 10. It's enjoyable, entertaining for what it is. And do I need to rewatch it? Nah, not really. Just I can rewatch it every 5 years and call it a day. Watch the other films every 2-3 years, sure. But this film every once 5 years is not that important. It sucks to say that because I can't wait to see what Abomination, once these characters come back, then that'll be more important. But as this film itself,
I wonder if they're going to change his design at all. That's kind of what I'm most excited for about seeing him again. I'm wondering if he's maybe mutated over the last decade, because in the comics he also has weird fish ears sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if they're going to reshape the way he looks. That would be
I hope
cool.
so. I really hope so. There's a lot of potential, right? The only negative is that I don't care about Betty in the film and her boyfriend. I really don't give a shit about all of that subplots. I feel like using relationships in movies, it's just a cheap way to move the story along. Yes, Betty's a huge part of his story in the comics, but it's still not interesting to me.
Is her boyfriend Ty Burrell in this movie?
I think.
Yes, my wife and I have been watching Modern Family recently, and it's just clicking in my brain that Phil from Modern Family had this really small part in The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
Weird, dude.
His name is Doc Samson.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, that would be my only negative, that I just genuinely don't care about relationships in movies in general. But like again, it's the most forgettable part of the entire film for me. But I still think it's a lot of fun. The last time I saw the film was right after Endgame, where I just wanted to binge watch absolutely everything MCU that I could get, and I just binge watch all of them. But yeah, that was The Incredible Hulk. I probably won't watch it again for another 5 years, but when I do, it'll be really fun. So let's move on.
To end on a positive note, I just want to add one more thing, because I
Yeah,
know
of
I
course.
kind of ended on a downer in my
Go ahead.
opinion for The Incredible Hulk. The best choice that this movie makes is putting the origin story in the opening credits scene.
Yes.
Not making it an origin film is probably one of the smartest things that they did with that script. One of my favorite parts about the whole movie.
Yeah,
All right,
because I
let's
mean,
move on.
that was a smart decision, because it's like, yeah, this can be done in the opening credits. Like, we do not
Oh,
need
yeah.
to waste an Incredible Hulk movie just telling this origin, which is a huge mistake that other franchises makes. It's like, you think that this origin is important, I promise you it's not, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's this Snake Eyes movie happening. I promise you I don't care about Snake Eyes' origins. I don't care. If you want to give me Snake Eyes early years, like year 1, year 2, after he's Snake Eyes, after he makes the vow, sure. But I don't give a shit about, I don't want to see Snake Eyes as a kid,
Right.
watching him grow up and all that bullshit. And then he won't be Snake Eyes until the last 15 minutes. I
Until the
don't
last
want to
20
see
minutes.
that. I don't want to see that. But anyways, I
Dude,
digress.
it always reminds me of that old Patton Oswalt joke from like the early 2000s where he goes back in time and talks to George Lucas before he makes the prequels. And George Lucas is like, "Oh, you like Darth Vader, right? Well, wouldn't you like to see him as a kid?" And Patton Oswalt's like, No, I don't give a fuck about
No.
that.
It's like, no, I don't give a shit. Like, I feel like the biggest problem is that they should have started with Anakin as a teenager in the
Yeah.
first film. Him as a teenager, and the last 2 films should have been him as Vader. That's what I think. They had a huge missed opportunity. I do not
would've
give a
been
shit
cool.
about Anakin as a kid. But anyways, let's get into Thor, Iron Man 2. That dropped in 2010, also directed by Jon Favreau. I feel like this movie gets a lot of hate that is undeserved, in my opinion. But Vash, I would like to start with you. What are some of your positives from Iron Man 2?
Ooh. I enjoyed this film for what it was. It was definitely a letdown to go from Iron Man to Iron Man 2. But my positives is Justin Hammer and a kind of better semi version of Whiplash from the comics. So that was dope as hell. But definitely Justin Hammer. Like, I wish he was more present in the MCU. Like, people need to understand, like, the number one competitor in weapons was him and Norman Osborn as well, and within the comics. So to see Justin Hammer, hold on, give me a second. Sorry about that. And to see Justin Hammer on screen, and to see his character, and to see his jealousy for Iron Man the suit, and him losing the whole weapon contracts and everything. He's always been that guy who's power hungry, greedy in the comics, and to see this character on screen for who he is, and like his jealousy for Tony, and Tony working with Nick Fury, and Nick Fury like, hey, I had this, Avengers and everything, and then Tony being nosy about it, like, you know what? Actually, I don't want you to be part of it. I just want you to tell me about these other people's, even though I want you to eavesdrop. And then like Tony's like, wait, so you want Iron Man, but not Tony? We're literally the same person. So I love that chemistry between him and Nick. Like, and one of my favorite lines throughout the film is when he said, which Iron Man am I supposed to look at? The one of the eye patch or you? And like, I just love that. Like, I just love that chemistry between them. Like, yes, what James says is perfectly said. Like, Iron Man has a lot of slack, just like Iron Man 3, and I can't wait to get to that next week and everything. But Iron Man 2 has its moments, and his moments are more high than it's low. That's what I would say for the positives overall.
Yeah, Chris?
Vash is absolutely right. Sam Rockwell is the one of the strongest parts of this movie. He's so funny. He's like a cracked Tony Stark. He's like, what if Tony Stark wasn't quite as successful as he is? That's who Justin Hammer is. And I don't know if you're aware, but Sam Rockwell actually auditioned to play Tony Stark when they were casting the first Iron Man. So like,
Yep.
They gave him the opportunity to play this like broken version, essentially, the one that just cannot get shit together.
It's funny how
But-
that happens, because Hiddleston went in
auditioned
for Thor.
It's
It's crazy.
and he became Loki. But it is crazy, it's nice that they kind of recognize talent and they're like, we'll fit you in somewhere, you know. But I think Justin Hammer's a perfect role for Sam Rockwell. Again, Robert Downey Jr. is so charming and charismatic as Tony Stark that really he elevates the quality of most of the films that he's in as Iron Man and Tony Stark. You know, like, yeah, this film has its problems. It was the first time we saw that, okay, building a shared universe might be detrimental to certain films because you feel the need to cram things into a movie that explain things in other movies that have nothing to do with the plot that's taking place. But again, that's, like I said earlier, that's only a problem that really occurs as the movies are coming out. Like, I remember not a lot of people liked Iron Man 2 when it first came out, but as time has gone on, because we've seen where the story goes, because we see where these threads are relevant, the movie's fine. The movie gets better. The same thing happens with Age of Ultron, in my opinion, at least, you know? But yeah, this movie is a ton of fun. The suit up scene on the racetrack with the Mark V is still one of my favorite suit up scenes in the entire MCU. And that's because we're still in a place where Tony Stark's suits have this tactile feel. They're still machinery, you know, like he still has to clunk his arms into the suitcase and pull the suitcase to his chest. And like, you can see all the different panels forming around him instead of it just being like nanobots magically forming to his body. Like, it's just a super cool suit up scene, in my opinion. But yeah, this movie's a ton of fun, and yeah, it catches a lot of flack, but that's okay.
I do want to add to that, to what Chris said real quick. When he said I am Iron Man in the first film, when I thought Iron Man 2 was coming out, when I first thought of what he was working on with the nano stuff, or I thought we were gonna get Extremis in Iron Man 2. I'm like, okay, because when he becomes Iron Man, when he tells the world, using the comics, he gets Extremis because he has to have his weapons already in case he gets attacked, since now all his enemies know who he is. So I'm like, okay, so are we gonna get Extremis in this? That was a letdown, you know, a bit letdown, and we can't wait to talk about that next week, because that's one of my negatives in Iron Man 3 about Extremis. But to know that suit, the scene of how he gets close to Extremis, but like gets to like technology coming closer to him, or more magnetized, or whatever he is. I love that scene. Like that race car scene, I don't know how they filmed it, but it was so well done and well edited as well to make it seem so smoothly. So props to that in the post-production department.
Yeah, in that scene, you can already see like the gears turning in Tony's head, where it's like, how can I make the suit more portable? You know, and like most of his main suits for the first couple of movies are still these things that he has to use like a gantry to get into or something. Yeah. But you can see that he's like trying to figure it out. How can I make it so the suit's always with me? And we eventually get to that point. But it's super cool.
Yeah, I love this movie, man. Like, rewatching it again today, I'm like, man, this movie was so much fun. Again, score is awesome, right? Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer. I mean, the dude is unstoppable. Like, every line delivery is just perfect. Like, watching him dancing at, like, the Stark Expo was awesome. The suitcase suit was one of my favorite things in this movie, because that was a huge highlight of like the Iron Man animated series for me when I was growing up. The suitcase suit was one of my favorite things. And when Happy shows up in front of Pepper and he lifts up the suitcase, I'm like, holy shit, we're getting the suitcase suit. So I thought that was awesome. Another thing that I loved was, yet again, Tony Stark has to battle someone that has stolen his tech in order to use it for bad things. And yet again, it's still kind of his fault. So I love that, right? Like, he has all of this money, all of this status, but he keeps making human mistakes, which is something that's really important.
Tony Stark is the MCU's biggest villain.
Well, was it his fault though? Because wasn't it his father's fault, the one that didn't credit his that got whiplash father? So wasn't it really not Tony's fault, but technically his father's fault?
Technically, yes. Technically. But I mean, it was Vanko's fault for getting deported. I mean, he just wanted to sell it at the highest bidder or whatever. But I mean, you know, I like Mickey Rourke as what was his name in the movie? I can't remember. right now.
Ivan
I,
Vanko?
yes,
Ivory?
Ivan Vanko.
Ivan
Yeah.
Vanko.
Ivan.
I thought he was fine in the movie. Like in the beginning when his father dies while he's watching the news with Tony Stark. I actually felt his emotion in that scene. And he was able to take the plan, something that his father built, even though his father was still doing bad things. You know what I mean? He took that design and he made his own arc reactor and created the Whiplash suit. Whiplash from the comics, I think, is really boring. Is a super generic, like, C-level Rogues Gallery villain. But I thought that they did something interesting in this movie. They made him more grounded and they brought it full circle. Like, he is the villain to Tony Stark to avenge his father, who sees Howard Stark as the villain. So I thought that that contrast was done really, really well. Getting to see the senator in this film that we find out later on is a Hydra agent. That was great.
Gary
That was
Shandling.
great to see. Yeah, that actor is
He's an
awesome.
asshole.
He plays being a douchebag so well.
Very well.
Howard's message to Tony telling him, like, my greatest creation
that was beautiful.
was you, and you'll be able you'll be able to create the things that I only dreamed of because I was so limited by technology. So seeing that map of the city of the future and it actually being the blueprint for a new element just shows Howard's genius, and then in turn just shows Tony's genius, and I absolutely love it. There's so many things to appreciate in this film. I feel like the chemistry between Don Cheadle and Robert Downey Jr. is perfect. Instantly,
Agreed.
as soon as Don Cheadle walks into the courtroom, it's you can see the friendship. It's like Don Cheadle was in the first movie. You don't miss a beat at
Dude, I
any
love
moment.
that there's a line that has a little meta context to it where he's like,
Yeah.
I'm here for deal with it. You know, like that's kind of a nod to the audience being like, Terrence Howard was replaced. Get
Yep.
over it.
Yeah.
You know, we're moving forward.
I love how a boy from Queens, a boy that has Flushing Park literally right close to him, to know that in this film they use Flushing to literally what James brought up, the new element, like literally like they use the whole element to make a new thing with Flushing Park and everything. I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool.
That is
And
cool.
just to see what they did with it, like that was amazing of what they did with the production with that aspect. So like it shows the intelligence of Tony and Howard and everything, and it shows a beautiful message. We also get the introduction of Scarlett Johansson as well.
Yeah, we haven't even
Her,
mentioned that yet.
You know,
Goddess.
Good call.
like that move that she did to take out the whole fight sequence where our boy what's his name, our boy Happy was
Yeah.
supposed to be driving, but also at the same time I'm gonna look through the rear mirror.
Yeah, she's
like
bad
her
as fuck,
changing
bro.
real- and she's like, hey, pay attention to driving, and I was like, girl, I don't care about driving, I want to look at you. So like I still love her Happy. That chemistry, ScarJo was amazing in this film, and her introduction as the Black Widow, her fight scenes was amazing, and to see our boy War Machine, like the whole team up was amazing. Like the character, like James brought up, the whole chemistry, it just felt like it was always there. So I just love that very much.
Yeah,
So-
that final sequence is super cool when they're in the Japanese garden. The contrast between like all the violence and the cherry blossoms like floating around them. That's just really cool.
I was just
Visually,
gonna say
it looks awesome.
that's actually like one of my favorite moments from any solo film in the Infinity Saga so far, because I'm a huge Rhodey fan, right? Like growing up, I didn't have a lot of black heroes, so it was like holy shit, we have a black Iron Man. I love Rhodey. His first name is James. I fuck with this guy, right? So I absolutely love Rhodey. Don Cheadle did an amazing job, and then that scene at the end, like you guys just said, like it's so amazing watching Iron Man and War Machine fighting side by side. Just watching War Machine just literally cut a robot in half with bullets.
dope,
I was
bro.
losing my shit. But let's talk about Black Widow real quick, right? As much as I am absolutely in love with Scarlett Johansson, and Mia knows I would leave her in 4 seconds if she ever came my way, they did her an injustice in this film. She is just, and technically, yes, she is a spy. Sometimes spies have to play the honeypot role to get what they need, but that's all she was in this film. Yes, Scarlett Johansson is insanely gorgeous, but you don't need to do this many things to make me think that she's gorgeous, right? Like she gets into the ring really, really slow. The way she looks up at Tony and the camera pans, like it's like, I get it, bro. I get it. Believe me. Tony looking up like the pictures of her modeling career, and I'm like,
Yeah, constantly like oogling her.
we don't need all of this. She's a gorgeous woman. There is no need to overly sexualize her, right? Like, she already looks amazing in the Black Widow suit. She looks amazing in every dress that she's in. That's enough. I feel like all of those extra scenes were just a little bit too much. Like, someone who's an assassin, like, you would not have that long of hair in battle. You just won't, which is why
It's not practical.
Yeah, which is why I like that Joss Whedon decided to give her a haircut in the Avengers. It's more practical, right? She's a warrior. If you have long hair, it can be used against you in a fight. So that was probably one of my only real like negatives from this movie, is simply the fact that Scarlet and the Black Widow was not used to her full potential. But I get it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like, for most of these films, Black Widow isn't used to her full potential, you know. But I'm excited to see Black Widow in July.
Yeah.
So
Fuck yeah, bro.
She's finally getting a movie
after a year later,
you know, over a decade. But yeah, I would say that's also one of my negatives as well. Another one, I enjoy Mickey Rourke in this movie, but his accent is fucking ridiculous.
I want my bud.
That's literally probably one of the only things that I can understand him saying in this whole movie. Like,
I want my bird.
I've seen this
Like,
so
what?
many times,
What?
but
My
I'm
bird.
still picking up new pieces of dialogue after a fucking decade of the things that he's saying. Like the whole conversation he has with Tony in the cell after he's captured in Monaco. The first time I saw it, I was like, I have no idea what he's fucking saying. Like,
This is the only film I actually always have subtitles for.
that's a good idea.
Like to actually make sure when I hear him speak, I could just read the subtitle, like, you know,
Yeah.
like, hey, my guy, I respect you. You're an actor. I don't know why you chose this accent or whatever director, producer told you, but I'm going to read the subtitle like, oh, you want your bird? All right, cool. You want your bird? You want some Italian? All right, cool. But that's the one scene. But I also want to throw the joke that War Machine, Rhodey, James, he was so cocky at that fight scene because he's like, yo, I got the best missile here from Justin Hammer. I'm
gonna bust this bunker with the ex-wife.
Yeah, right. And then after that, nothing happens. And then Tony be like, you should not trust him. No,
Hammer tech.
you shouldn't. Yeah, Hammer tech. I was like, this is amazing. Like, I still love that chemistry. Like James brought up, it just works so well. It's organic. And those are the best type of chemistry when it doesn't feel forced. And I just love it how when those two were working together, they just cover each other so well within the fight as two people in two suits. They didn't have to try to coordinate their fights. They just knew to work together and they knew how to take out each machine and everything. So I just love how it worked very well. And to add to what James said earlier, Whiplash, what Chris brought up, yes, the accent, it was okay, cool, well, sure, whatever. But from the comics, it's a one-dimensional character. It's like Taskmaster, but Taskmaster has a better personality and character. But without the personality, that's Whiplash, because he works for people for hire, like Justin Hammer and other characters. But in this movie, they gave him more, he has a backstory, he has a father. He got ripped off because of this whole invention and such. So I'm very happy that he got this character. But the accent, I definitely agree with that, because sometimes people with accents are very hard to understand. But movies, you got to make it easier for a broader audience to understand what the hell they're saying without subtitles.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like you just get to a point, it's like, this accent doesn't work. 86 it. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah,
86
exactly.
it.
Yep.
Just like, yeah, I spent most of my childhood in America, and that's why I speak like an American. Like, because the accent is just, it's so distracting sometimes because it's so bad, right? Oh, man. But
Mickey Rourke is not Russian.
Right.
You know, like, he's doing his impression of what a Russian accent sounds like. Which
Yeah,
is
it's like-
also something that, you know, people have made fun of when it comes to, like, Elizabeth Olsen and her Sokovian accent. You know, like, people that aren't actually from these countries have a hard time impersonating those dialects.
Yeah, I will say over time I've become a lot more forgiving of the Sokovian accent by Aaron
Me
Taylor
too.
Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen. It just is what it is. Like, it does come off as Count Chocula to me. Like, sometimes I just want them to say, bleh! Exactly, right? But I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, that would probably be my only negative from this film. Because I also love that they explore Tony's alcoholism. They go into it, but they don't really dive that much into it, and I'm okay with it because I knew there was more films to come, right? So this was just the seeds of like, yeah, I mean, when things are bad, sometimes Tony goes to alcohol to deal with his issues, right?
And then they don't really touch on it very often.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he's a big drinker. I mean, there's that whole demon in a bottle storyline from the comic books.
Yeah.
But it's something, I mean, it's probably because Disney ended up buying Marvel and they don't want to make one of their heroes an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But like you're absolutely right. Like this is really the only movie where we get to see that element of his personality. And then it's kind of they don't even explicitly state it, but in Spider-Man Far From Home, Happy addresses while he's talking to Peter, he's like, Tony was a mess. Like behind the scenes, he was an absolute mess, you know? So I also appreciate that they brought that element to this film.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I wish they show more of the human element, like we brought up in the conversation of Iron Man 1, that we know the superheroes, but we need to see the human side as well. Like, okay, he's a scientist, he is a big billionaire, but he's a scientist, and that's key. But also to note that when you're a hero, you have a lot of PTSD because you're literally saving out others, but you see things that other people don't see, like the deaths, the blood, and these are things that like distress. You are a billionaire of your own company, but your company is going to shit because you're not a weapons company no more. So stuff like that is that what Chris brought up, like Happy brought it up, like he's a mess, but people that could read between the lines understand what that means. But people will be like, he was probably depression, anxiety or something. But no, he's like, he had a drinking problem. Like he's a guy that had a whole nuke going up that we're about to talking about in a few. So stuff like that is very important to talk about, and I love that very much. But I wish the MCU, that's why they're doing these type of TV shows, because they're showing more of the human element of these characters more. So I'm really happy about that. But hopefully they do that more in the movies itself, not just TV shows, because not everyone has Disney Plus and everything like that.
Yeah, one of my last positives is just Clark Gregg as Phil Coulson, man. Like, this dude was so amazing in all of these movies that he's in. He's great in the first Iron Man. He's great in Iron Man 2. He's great in Thor. He's great in Marvel's The Avengers. Like, Clark Gregg is just amazing. And it sucks for me because I am not an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, right?
Nor am I.
I would love to get more Phil Coulson.
I'm the only one here?
But I fell off after like maybe the third episode of season 2. I'm like, this just isn't for me, man. Like, sure, they have references to the movies, but this show is just not good. It's just not good from a production standpoint, from a story standpoint. It's just weak to me. I don't think it's terrible in any way. It's just there's so many other things that I could be watching and reading that is just a waste of my time, if I'm being honest with you guys. But let me get your thoughts on Phil Coulson, and then we'll move into Thor.
He's the glue that ties all this together, and that's why what happens to him in Avengers is so important for all those characters, because they've all experienced a relationship with him in some capacity. But yeah, I think Clark Gregg did an amazing job. He turned something that was initially just supposed to be one role in one movie into a fan favorite character, which is hard to do. So I love Phil Coulson. I have a Phil Coulson hot toy back there somewhere.
Nice.
Actually, like,
wow, you do?
Super
Wow,
obscure.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Vash, what are your thoughts on Phil?
For me, about Phil Coulson, it sucks to hear from a panel here that I'm the only fan that has watched 5 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Never saw the last season, but because I probably will want to rewatch it. But Phil Coulson, Chris said it perfectly, a fan favorite that they brought him back to life and then had his own spin-off series, and then for 6 seasons of a show based on him and his character of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So that shows you of how much of a fan favorite character he was to actually have his own show and his own spin-off series. But as I mentioned earlier, he was the glue of the characters with Captain America, Thor, Iron Man. Like, it showed how much love for the character he is. And people that haven't read the comics, Phil Coulson is not huge in the comics, but because of these movies, they have made a bigger role for him. Like, in the most recent years, he has his own comics now with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.,
which is not bad, actually. It's actually pretty
Really?
good.
That's great.
It's really fun.
Yeah, it's good.
I'll have to check it out.
I read it. Like, it has the cast of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but dive into the series, which, like I just said, I'm a huge Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, but the comics are much better because it actually gives the better story of the characters and gives a spin-off, because it also talks about the Inhumans in a better light, in a much better way. So that's actually done very well in the comics. So it's really well for anybody that's interested for the Phil Coulson comics, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., go check it out because it's actually very good.
Yeah, I picked up the #1 physical and then I read the rest digitally because I just wanted #1 because I figured eventually it would be higher up in value. I do that a lot with my #1s. But yeah, man, let's move into Thor. This is a film that I actually had a lot more fun with than any other viewing I've ever had for this movie. And I thought it was interesting, like how I felt that differently, and I'll explain. Like, I think Kenneth Branagh's direction was actually really good in this film. I think the score is great in this film as well. And man, the acting by Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston in this movie, oh my god, they're amazing. Like, Tom Hiddleston carries this movie, bro. Like, we
Totally.
follow this film through the lens of Thor, but Tom Hiddleston carries this movie, and it's to me it's really Loki's movie and everything that he's going through, in my opinion. But again, like the hero we're supposed to be following is Thor. I love the casting of Idris Elba as Heimdall, even though I think he's ridiculously underused in the entire MCU. But I'm hoping that we get to see more of him in the Loki series. I'm not going to hold my breath or anything.
That would be sick, though.
It would be, because I mean, it's a completely different timeline starting from 2012, so he's not dead. So I think it would be really, really interesting. I love the design of Asgard. It looks exactly like how I would envision it being live action coming from the comics. I love all of the costume designs. Like, Odin looks amazing. Thor's costume looks so accurate. Sif's costume looks accurate. The Warriors 3 are so accurate to the comics. Everything, Heimdall's sword, the Bifrost, everything is so comic book accurate. So the production design, the costume design is absolutely incredible in this film. I will say Kenneth Branagh does a little too many Dutch tilts for me in this film. Like, he just went absolutely fucking crazy with these Dutch tilts. But I love this movie. One of my favorite moments is where Loki is touched by one of the frost giants, and instead of getting freezer burned, he starts turning blue like a giant, and he sees the way that the frost giant looks at him, and he's starting to realize what he is, right? And then he actually picks up the Casket of Winters, and it turns him completely blue like a frost giant. And his monologue when he's talking to Odin about that's why you favored Thor all of these years, because you couldn't deal with a frost giant sitting on the throne of Asgard. Like, Tom Hiddleston's line delivery was fucking incredible, bro. Natalie
Almost
Portman's
Shakespearean.
Right. Natalie Portman's fine in the film, but I feel, again, yet wasted. She's this brilliant astrophysicist, but yet, like, she just can't get over how good Thor looks. And I get it, right? Like, Chris Hemsworth is a great looking guy. I get it, right? But I feel like that shouldn't have been such a focus for her character in this movie. Yes, you get the glances when he doesn't have his shirt on, right? But there's other things you could have done with Jane Foster. So I feel like that's one part where they kind of dropped the ball for me. They didn't do enough with Jane Foster in this film. Another one of my favorite moments is when Thor breaks into the shield camp that they build around the hammer, and he tries to lift it, and then he realizes that he can't because he's not worthy anymore. Right? I absolutely love that scene. There's so many great scenes in this film. Again, talking about designs, the Destroyer design straight off the page into the book, right? And the blast. I love the sound design for the blast from the Destroyer. The way that Mjolnir sounds when Thor is swinging it, when he brings down the lightning, when it's just flying through the air. I think a lot of things work with this film. And for me, the only place where it lacks is with Jane Foster. Chris, let me get your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with most of what you said, man. Like, before this movie came out, this was the one where people were like, how is this going to happen? You know, because like I said earlier, Thor's based in Norse mythology, and it's a comic book that revolves around magic. And it's just like, how do you make these characters exist in the same world as Tony Stark? And they pulled it off. Kenneth Branagh did a great job. And all the concept artists did a fantastic job showing us these magical things like the Rainbow Bridge. The Rainbow Bridge design is excellent because, like, it's kind of like this glass with like energy running through it that like form the colors of a rainbow. So it's physically there. It's not really magic. It is alien technology. I think that's one of the smartest things that they did was they really played into like the alien aspect of the Asgardians, and by doing that, by saying like the Asgardians are not gods, but just like a really long-lived race of aliens. That's how you base it in reality, like they feel as though they are part of the universe. And I just think that was a brilliant idea. And like you said, James, translating Thor's outfit into something that looks like it's from the real world. They did a great job. I was wondering how they were going to handle like the Donald Blake thing and Donald Blake transforming into Thor like he does in the comics.
Yeah.
It makes sense that they just totally abandoned it. I do enjoy that there's a call out to Donald Blake, at least in the film, with the name tag on one of the shirts. But yeah, going into it, I was like, how the hell are they going to make that work? Like Donald Blake transforming into Thor.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. He's kind of more like the ultimate version of Thor than the standard, 616 version, which I think was a good choice. You were absolutely right that Tom Hiddleston is like one of the strongest parts of this film. It's probably why they didn't kill him. And he's like one of the most beloved characters of the MCU.
Only one.
But yeah, I have fun with this movie. Over time, like you, I've grown to like it more and more. I do think that it probably has one of the weakest third acts out of the entire phase 1.
Yeah, because I mean the fight with the destroyer. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but the fight with the destroyer is pretty anticlimactic. Like
it is.
He gets bitch slapped by the destroyer, and then he pulls up the destroyer with a tornado, and then just blows him up.
Yeah. So I don't think it's the strongest third act. We do get him like confronting Loki a little bit after that, but in terms of like this copy and paste thing where our heroes fight, the big bad and then the final climactic battle, like I think it's the weakest. I really like Darcy Lewis. I know a lot of people don't like her character, but I think she's absolutely fucking hilarious.
Awesome.
Dude, her interaction with Chris Hemsworth in this film are so funny. Like I can't help but laugh.
Meow meow.
She's just meow meow. She's just an observer.
I appreciate you, Chris, for bringing that up because I was gonna bring that up as one of my first things of Candings. I used to watch her phone, Two Broke Girls, and to see her in this film, I was like, okay, I love this, and to see how, I felt like she was a better actress than Natalie Portman. Like. Yeah, like I felt like she did more comedy times, more like that's harsh. And I feel bad because I want to become an actor in the future too. So it's like damn, I'm sorry to say that, but it could be her, it could be the script, it could be the writing, the director. Who many knows? There's a lot of chess piece there, but I just love Kenny Danks for what she did, and to see her be brought back for WandaVision, I love that. So they made a smart move for the character, for her role.
Yeah, a really fun, underrated character in the MCU, and this is where that character got its start. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, this was also the first time that we got to see Hawkeye. So once we got that intro, I was like, holy shit, that's Hawkeye. And then Jeremy Renner, I mean, he doesn't get to actually do anything in the film.
That poor dude.
But it was great to see Hawkeye on screen for the first time. It's like, he's like, you want me to take him? And he just has the bow. He's ready to shoot Thor. And then he just doesn't do anything. And then we'll get to it when we talk about the Avengers. But then in the Avengers, he's just this mindless drone, but he gets to do stuff later on. And I can't wait for the Hawkeye series. That's going to be dope as well. But Vash, let me get your positives for the film.
My overall thoughts for this film. I don't know much about Thor comics. I know him as a character. I have read Thor. So I was excited to see this, but like Chris and James brought up, like to see magic on screen, like fucking Asgard, like yo, like we see Asgard, a magical place that we have read in Greek mythology and other places, but to see it on screen, not in a cartoon, not in a comic, but to see it on screen, and it looked freaking amazing. Like it looked much better than I visioned where it could be and how it is. Like to see Odin, like the grandmaster of all of Asgard, to see Loki, the character, like the god of mischief, to see him, Sif and them, they was very underwhelming because in the comics cartoons they're a lot better. So very sucks. They got very shorthanded. I was very sad
Not
for
their
them. I'm
movie.
like,
I actually
you
would have
can-
been pissed off if they spent too much time on the Warriors 3 and Sif. If
Yeah.
I'm being
Oh yeah,
honest.
definitely not the movie. Would it be interesting to see them on a Disney Plus show? Maybe, but definitely not the movie. I totally agree on that. But I love Loki. The reason, like, this is out of all the films that has made like Incredible Hulk and everything, other than our boy Abomination and everything, but this is the only villain they didn't kill, Loki, because they probably knew what they had while filming. They probably changed the script. They probably changed the script. Who knows? But for them to not kill Loki, I'm so happy because look what we have 10, 12 years later to know whatever character we have, that he's going to be having his own show next month now. So that's very exciting. And for Thor as a character to actually be on screen and come to Earth, and for him to like me as a crybaby, as a why am I worth it? Like, he was excited to be the next person in line as king and everything. He was cocky, he was excited, and now his father was trying to teach him a lesson. Like, yo, bro, my son, you're stupid. I'm gonna throw you and banish you and have your punishment. And Thor didn't understand what he was going through until the end of the film. Yes, James said it perfectly. Anticlimactic, because that third act is the weakest out of all Phase 1 films. Definitely very lackluster. But overall, to see what Thor accomplished as a magical, alien species, as magic, or what our boy Tony Stark called it, that is science that we don't understand yet. So I love that very much as a character of Thor. Seeing it on the big screen and being entertained by it, to me, I couldn't ask for more, and I was entertained by it very much. So I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, there was so I mentioned something before that I noticed in this film this time around, and it's like, were they really thinking this far ahead? So it's the beginning of the film where Odin is about to make Thor king, and he's like, Thor, Odin's son, my firstborn. Frigga, the camera turns to Frigga, right? And then she looks away and she gives this look. It's like, were they already planning to make Hela one of Thor's kids this early on? Because why would the camera turn to her? Why would she give that look if that wasn't the case? And I could totally be reading into this, but the way she looks off into the distance, it's like she knows that's bullshit because Thor isn't her first child, right? So you guys can tell me what you think.
So I think that's a cool thing, like in hindsight, like you could squeeze that into the mythology of the MCU. But another way you could read it, and I prefer to read it your way, I think that's way cooler. But I think another way you could read it is Frigga just acknowledging that Loki's not his son. Like, not just firstborn, but like only son. But he's kind of been putting on this act for years that Loki is his second son, when in reality it's not by blood, just adopted. So I think you could read it that way too, but I prefer your Hela fan theory.
Yeah.
And from now on, that's all I'm going to see.
I would prefer that as well, because it's just like Kevin Feige has come to say that kid that got saving Iron Man 2 is actually Tom Holland, retcon that. So it could be something that James, is probably headcanon, which I'd rather see it that. I didn't notice that before when I rewatched Thor a couple years ago. I'm like, did they do that? But at the same time, I'm not the director. I'm not Kevin Feige, so I don't know. But the way James brought up, hey, guys, let's just take this forward for the next couple of years from now, and let's just stay with that as headcanon from now on. Guys, I should like that theory, and it makes it more connected and more cohesive of them trying to plan Thor to Thor 3.
I'm totally okay with that retcon.
Yeah, I hope they do it, because to me it fits, and it makes so much sense that she would kind of be disgusted that Odin would just completely act like Hela doesn't even exist, and that's actually
like, you lying son of a bitch, like that ain't our first kid. But I'm gonna look away, not even look, sure.
But I also love like Loki's plan, right? Like in the end, like you can look at it and think that he's a bad person, but he's just someone trying to seek attention from his dad, right? Like he feels like he's been in his older brother's shadow his entire life. only to then find out that he's not actually related to them, and all he wants is his father's approval. He lets the frost giants into Asgard, which could potentially kill many Asgardians, but he only did it so that he could kill them in front of Odin to prove his loyalty, right? Like, he just wants his dad's approval. And I will say this right here. I think Tom Hiddleston's Loki is the best and most compelling version of Loki in any medium. And I'll stick to that, bro.
I would agree with that.
Loki's cool in the comics, but he's just an asshole. He's just the asshole god of mischief in the comics. Yes, there are layers to him, but I don't think those layers are as good as they are in the MCU.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I would agree to that as well, because it gives the human nature of the first villain we have that can understand, like, there's friends or ourselves we know that has had siblings that feels very undershadowed from some type of parent love, and parent love is such a strong thing. And to see it from the villain side, not from the hero side, where Loki is not really a hero villain, but he's just a child. And where Odin has said, like, why are you acting such a child? Like, I've always shown my best love to you. And that's Odin has always said to Loki. But Loki finding out that he's not related by blood, but he always felt like he was getting more shine by Thor more. He always felt like, I like that, accept me who I am, and like, put some spotlight on me too. And that's something that any parent or child would experience and love. That's why I feel like a lot of people like Loki as a character from the MCU. And James said it perfectly. Like, it's very, very relatable for us to understand as an audience and fans.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts
Definitely.
before we move on to the first Avenger?
If I were to pinpoint my negative, based on, well, other than everything we've already said, Chris Hemsworth has bleached eyebrows in this movie.
He does.
And that is the most offensive thing the MCU's ever done.
He
Those
does.
horrible,
Oh my God.
horrible bleached eyebrows.
This is, I would say, out of all the film, is definitely tied for the bottom between Incredible Hulk and Thor, but I think we're gonna try to rank them much later once we're done. But I'll just save my thoughts for later. I'm gonna just stay shut now.
Yeah, so let's get into one of my favorite MCU movies, period, Captain America, the First Avenger. Chris, I kind of want to start with you, but I'll just set the stage real quick. I absolutely love this film. I think the casting of Chris Evans as Captain America was the best decision, one of the best decisions they made in this entire universe. Even though he was very apprehensive to do the role, I think he turned it down like 2 or 3 times before he actually said yes. So this film is really, really, really important to me. The Captain America character is really, really important to me, and I can't wait to get into my thoughts. But Chris, I want to start with you.
James and I have had many conversations about our love for this particular movie and character. This is also, one of my favorite movies in the entirety of the MCU, solely for the same reason that James mentioned, which is Chris Evans as Captain America. Again, like Thor, before we saw these movies for the first time, you question, like, how are these things going to play as well as Iron Man did? How is that even possible? But Chris Evans brings such heart to the character of Steve Rogers. And again, it harkens back to what we were talking about earlier, about you have to fall in love with the man under the mask, or the character under the mask, before you can appreciate the hero that they are. And I think what you mentioned, James, about Chris Evans' reluctance to play Steve Rogers, I think that even feeds into like the success of the character. He's just so morally straight. He plays his morality so straight, like unwavering in his genuine goodness. And that's something that was so rare at that time when Captain America came out. We weren't getting superheroes like that on the silver screen when the first Captain America movie came out. So I don't know, it was refreshing to see, and it's a movie that I come back to constantly. And we'll get into my feelings on the Avengers, but like the Avengers, I've told James, like, there are certain movies in the MCU that are kind of like chicken soup, man. Like when I'm feeling down, or like regardless of my emotion at the time, if I'm sad, if I'm sick, if I'm happy, if I'm excited, like these movies are the ones that I'll always revisit. And Captain America: The First Avenger is one of those films, just because I love what Chris Evans does with Steve Rogers so much. He's such a genuinely positive force, and I really dig that.
Yeah, Vash.
One of my favorite lines of this film, and I'll say the quote about Dr. Erskine, because a strong man who has known power all his life may lose respect for that power, but a weak man knows the value of strength and knows compassion.
I love
When
it.
he told that message to Steve Rogers right before he did the surgery, I love that, because that message is why he chose him as to be the next Captain America. Or sorry, as to become Captain America, as why he chose Steve Rogers. And Steve always kept that mindset why he chose Sam Wilson later on in the years. And I love that message of Dr. Erskine and Captain America throughout the whole film, because Steve always wanted to help people. And even that scene when I forgot the name of the general, but when he said, and he threw the grenade, everyone
Tommy Lee
back
Jones.
off and everything, but Steve went there. Yeah, thank you, Tommy Lee Jones. When he threw the grenade, and Steve went to protect the grenade so nobody else could get hit, and that proved Erskine on point. And Tommy Lee Jones like, damn, fuck, that didn't work for me.
Bro,
so I just love that type of chemistry. And
that scene makes
those
me
type of
cry
messages.
every time I watch it.
It's so good.
Because to me, Captain America is Steve Rogers is the symbol of a hero for me. One thing that I loved about Steve Rogers in general is that he was always just a guy who always knew that he needed to do right, and he was giving a unique opportunity to do it at a higher level. He didn't need a mutation to make him a hero. He didn't need like magically getting powers to be like, you know what, I have these powers, I should use them. He had no problems just being a normal guy, a regular soldier, and dying on the front lines, protecting the country that he lives in and the people that he cares about. So that was something that I always loved about Captain America. And Chris Evans completely embodies that throughout this entire film and the entire Infinity Saga. Like you said, Vash, like when he jumps on top of that grenade and tells everyone to get back, even though the hardest soldiers of them all, Gilmore Hodge, ran behind a fucking Jeep, right?
Jeep, right?
Yeah. Steve Rogers was the one that dove head first onto that grenade. He didn't give a shit about living or dying. All he knew is that the men around him would be safe if he did this. That is the mark of a true hero, bro. Like, the score hit perfectly. I'm trying not to tear up right now as I talk about it, but I shit you not, every time I see that scene, I start to tear up, bro. It's such an important scene to me, and it's one of my favorite moments of the entire movie. But Vash, continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
And just to continue that, like just to show the chemistry between Sebastian Stan as well and Steve Rogers as Chris Evans, it showed the chemistry of Bucky Barnes and Steve Rogers from the comics. Like, it literally, you was grabbing it from a piece of paper of cloth into on screen of Sebastian Stan coming here to make sure, like, hey, are you sure about this? Are you sure you want to call me? And Steve always kept trying to go and join the armed force and everything, but he couldn't because he was just skinny and everything. And it showed that he was just a kid from Brooklyn that just wanted to help and protect people and save. And then I love how the lines from this movie relate to the next movies later on into Civil War, when you first fight saying that I could do this all day, and later again repeats that I can do this all day. And in this movie, he says that I'm just a kid from Brooklyn. When he meets Spider-Man, hey, I'm a kid from Queens. Oh,
what
I'm
a great
kid
moment
from Brooklyn. So like those type of lines, like this movie and the first Iron Man are the two films that I feel like they always take lines and repeat them in the future, and like knows what people remember, or like what are those snippets. And I find that really beautiful because they know what they have Chris Evans, like the type of emotional impact of the doctor when the doctor got shot. Not not a big character, but to note that when he got shot, you felt the emotional loss that Chris Evans just lost, because he's a person that just made him a superhuman soldier. But at the same time, he's the one that made him and chose him, but also because he gave him that beautiful message. And I find that very beautiful. And
dude, in those last moments where he reaches up and taps Steve's heart to remind him of like why he was chosen to take the serum.
Oh,
He doesn't even say
damn, Chris,
anything.
you're about to make me cry there. Whew.
Right? Like,
Good
there's so
moment.
many
And that's
amazing
because that's
moments.
beautiful. It's beautiful. And like when Steve starts running and everything, like when Steve goes to Howard to choose a weapon, he doesn't choose a weapon as a sword or choose a weapon that's violent. He goes and chooses a shield because he chooses to protect people in that best way and form. And I love that because Steve was taught and he always had the heart, like Chris said, like always to protect people. And the way that shield is, like I love how in the most recent type of series of Falcon Winter Soldier, they even brought up that shield is not even property of the U.S. government because they even stole that type of vibranium from Wakanda. So I love how like they brought that line up again in the future series. So I just love this movie so much. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, man. Hugo Weaving as Red Skull was perfect casting. It makes
Totally
me
agree.
really sad that he doesn't want to come back to do the role anymore. But
It's the
I thought,
prosthetic though. He didn't like the prosthetic that they had to use on his face.
yeah.
So I can understand that.
I mean, but today you can just use CGI, just put the dots. Like, they might have to paint his face a little bit, but
Yeah.
he won't have to necessarily do a prosthetic. But I think he's amazing as Red Skull. Like, I think he perfectly nails the full force of being the evil that is Hydra, right? And Steve Rogers being the ultimate force for good. So seeing them fight against each other in all of those different moments were amazing. We got to see Arnim Zola. I thought that was dope. The actor does a really good job. I've seen him in a bunch of different like BBC shows. Like, I think the first time I ever
Toby
saw him
Jones?
was on the first time I saw him was on Doctor Who. And then I saw him in this movie. I was like, oh shit, there he is.
Did you guys know that Toby Jones is Dobby in Harry Potter?
I did not know that. He is?
Yeah.
No shit.
Isn't that crazy?
Oh wow,
Yeah.
did not know that.
Yeah, but again, another great MCU
And
film.
also-
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was looking at the cast as well, like to know about Peggy, the chemistry as well with Peggy and Steve, to know like the last dance that he never got, like that emotional scene when he was at the end flying the ship, and when Steve said like, "Hey, just send the phone with me and everything," and
gotta
then
put her
Steve
in the
like,
water.
"Are you gonna come back for our date tonight?" And I was just about to say that, James, and I was perfectly said, like, I got put in the water and like, okay, just come back to me. And then, like, they both knowing that they're lying to each other, but just keeping the tension, just keeping the moment, just keeping the love on the voice. And when Peggy said, like, hey, Steve, and when Tommy Lee Jones goes into the room and just give her space, like me right now, I'm a bit, like that scene is just impactful because it's like you're losing somebody that you just start to love and care about.
Right.
And knowing that he literally just started to save the planet. And he, like, this was literally his first mission as Steve Rogers, as Captain America, his official mission. And this was to stop the Red Skull. Mission accomplished. Save on the ship and everything here. And he did it. And he lost Peggy Carter, and Peggy Carter lost Steve. And that was
Yeah, he sacrificed
Oh,
everything.
damn.
That's the mark of a true hero,
Yep. He didn't even hesitate, right? Like, he just knew what he had to do, and that's the job, right? Like, that's the job of a soldier. It wouldn't be fair if he decided, like, oh, I'll be selfish to choose the perfect life for me, when all of the other soldiers that came before me just laid down their lives, right? So, like he said, like, I have no right to do any less than them, right? And I like you brought up earlier, Vash, like, I love the chemistry between Chris Evans and Sebastian Stan. Like, getting to see Cap and Bucky on screen, it's amazing. I'll tell you again, like, Sebastian Stan is my favorite version of Bucky from any medium, right? I think Bucky's a great character in the comics. I love the Winter Soldier in the comics. I think he's fucking amazing. But what they've been able to do with the Winter Soldier in the MCU, oh my god. But
it was a really smart idea to change Bucky from a teenager to a peer.
Right.
Because in the comic
agree with
books,
that.
he's like a ward to
Yeah.
Captain America initially, before he dies and becomes the Winter Soldier. But I think that was a really smart choice because it makes the relationship between them stronger. They're brothers,
Yeah.
instead of like mentor student.
Yeah. I absolutely I love. There's so many things I could talk about in this film, and like I know we're moving through these films pretty fast because I actually plan to do like some watch parties. Like once we're done with the Infinity Saga, I would love to do just some random watch parties because a film like Iron Man 3, I want to be able to go scene by scene and tell you why I don't like it. Right, and tell you all of the things that didn't work for me. So definitely stay tuned. We'll be doing some watch parties, and I can't wait to do one for this movie as well. There's so many great moments in this film. Like I love how in 1943 Hydra was able to weaponize the Tesseract, using the energy to weaponize it. And 80 years later, and we'll talk about this once we get into the Avengers movie, but S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't even able to make these weapons yet. They're still on the verge of trying to figure out how to make the Tesseract into an actual weapon. So that was something that I really, really appreciated, just showing the genius of Zola in that time, right? And again, bringing it back to Hugo Weaving, I thought he was amazing as Red Skull. He is the ultimate evil to the ultimate good, like I said before. I love how loyal the Hydra agents are to him. It's exactly like how it is in the comics, how they're so brainwashed that
they're probably just
give
afraid
up
of him.
their lives. Yeah, that's what it is, right? They're just so afraid because they see him as a god.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And speaking of that, I love that opening sequence where he's talking about Idrisil, the tree of the world and everything, and like talking about like not leaving the Tesseract inside of the coffin, which I think would be a really stupid place to leave the Tesseract if we're being honest.
Dude, that town is Tonsberg, and that's the same town that the Asgardians settle in.
Really?
In Endgame.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No shit.
It's also the same town that you see at the beginning of Thor during the prologue when the Frost Giants invade Earth. Tonsberg plays like a huge role in the MCU.
That's right, man. Dude, I forgot all
Shows
about
up
that.
multiple times.
But that also plays the same role in the comics because that's where that same town, like I'm shocked that they did it so well compared again to what James brought much earlier in Thor when like did they really plan these type of seeds from the very beginning, like thinking and hoping it would lead up to where they are now? So like if this was the case, like they were really hoping this MCU was succeeding to where it is now, because for them to do these type of towns, these type of foreshadowings and plead from what is from the comics to see to where it is now, that's many props to it.
I definitely think it was intentional from Thor to Captain America: The First Avenger because they came out immediately after each other. But yeah, it was something that they were able to utilize down the line to make it fit, which is awesome.
Yeah, I've seen this movie so many times. I've seen this movie so many times. I think I could watch it and just legit just say all of the dialogue. That's how many times I've seen this movie. Like the Captain America theme song, I know that front to back easily.
That's awesome.
Like I love this movie, bro. That's how many times I've seen it. I think I've seen this film maybe 40 to 50 times, honestly. Like I think just in 2021 I've seen it twice because I watched it for after I saw Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then I saw it again today for the podcast. So it's like this is a film that I watch multiple times a year, every year.
I think I've seen it twice in 2021 as well already.
Same. I've seen it twice as well for the movie. I mean, for the series of Falcon and Winter Soldier, and to watch it with my fiance, so twice as well.
I've seen some people online complain about not liking the montages of destroying Hydra bases. How do you guys feel about that?
So I really enjoy it, and the reason I enjoy it is because this is like a perfect segue into something that I wanted to bring up, which is we haven't yet mentioned Joe Johnston at all. Joe Johnston directed this movie. He has a huge back history with Lucasfilm. He worked on a bunch of the Star Wars movies from the 70s. He worked on Indiana Jones. But then he started directing his own pictures, and he actually directed The Rocketeer. So I think he was like the perfect choice for a period piece set in the 1940s because it was already proven that he could do something like this, you know?
Yeah.
And in terms of those montages, I really like them because they do harken back
to
that like Indiana Jones feel, like serialized 1930s, 1940s shows, you know, that they would play in movie theaters like Zorro and stuff like that. So I think it suits the tone that Joe Johnston's going for in the film very, very well. I don't think it's a issue at all. Why do people not like it? Have you looked into that at all?
No,
Do they just feel it's like cringy or something?
I don't know. I the things that I've seen is that they just wish that they actually got to see each of those battles. But it's like, how long do you want the film to be, right?
Right.
Like, I feel like going.
The thing is, I was gonna say that those battles are not important though, because the battle is important is the battle with Red Skull. That's the reason they're taking all these smaller camps out to take down, to meet against Red Skull and take him out. So I feel like those montages work perfectly, because you see, okay, cool, we see montages of him coming in, taking out the small camps, taking those small factories, and then making it smaller to find easier where Red Skull is and where is the Tesseract. That was the main goal, the whole purpose for it. And to actually not see the montage, I feel like that will make the film 20 minutes longer. And I'm like, the film doesn't need to see this little extra fat. If you want to see an extra fat, just probably go buy the Blu-ray to see the full version of it. But I feel like the montage fit so perfectly to show us him working with his crew, taking out the whole factories and those Hydra bases, and then boom, montage to fight the Red Skull. That was perfectly well set up for.
Yeah, you said it, right? Like, we want to see Cap versus Red Skull. Like, yes, I want to see Captain America punch Hydra agents in the face, but we got that in the montage sequence. I feel like the sequence, the prison break sequence is what I'll call it. I thought that was really long, really exciting. To watch him get out all of the soldiers, getting to Bucky and all of that stuff. And I love the interaction between him and Bucky, where Bucky's looking at him, he's like, I can't remember what Cap says first, but Bucky's like, you're taller or some shit like that.
He goes, what happened? And then Steve goes, I joined the army.
Right. I love that. Like, their chemistry is just so good. And I want to know what Zola did to Bucky that it didn't work well with other soldiers that they experimented on, right? Because obviously the super soldier serum that they were experimenting on Bucky worked, right?
Yeah, it helped preserve him, you know?
Yeah. So it's like, I would love to know more of that in like a one shot or like a sequel comic thing. I would love to see more of that
cool
stuff. But let me get your final thoughts on this film, unless you guys have other points that you wanted to bring up, because I do want to get into the Avengers movie.
I think I've said everything to be said, at least from me, for this movie. Like, I love this movie. I adore it.
Perfect. Me, I just want to say two more quotes that I love from Dr. Erskine. Whatever happens, stay who you are. Not just a soldier, but good man. Love that. And Red Skull, what makes you so special? And then Steve just smirks and is like,
Nothing.
I'm just a kid from Brooklyn.
Yep.
So I love those two quotes as well. Like, there's more quotes I could say, but those three that I mentioned throughout this section and everything is one of my favorites, because it shows that Steve just embodied Captain America. Chris Evans embodied Steve Rogers, Captain America, so well, and knew how to deliver those lines very fluently for him as a character. So props to that. And as overall, I was entertained as a film of this, and I'm very happy to be entertained by Captain America, because that's a Boy Scout to see it from a film from the comics, to actually see it on big screen, and to actually have a bigger, grander audience, and then have the end of the film, Nick Fury pop out and be like, hey, this is not the war no more. Things are bigger. Times Square is out here, so we gotta talk, my man. So, and then leads up to the next film, to which we're about to talk to next. But I love that it shows the more grander scale of how this phase 1 MCU has been connected slowly, and I love it very much.
Yeah, props to the screenwriters Marcus and McFeely for cracking the Captain America code.
Facts. Yeah, man, I love this movie
True.
so much. Like, it's one of my favorite MCU movies. It's one of my favorite movies in general. For everything else that we already mentioned, there is a timeline that I would like to visit where Steve is a cartoonist. That'd
be awesome.
Because in this film we do see him drawing, so we do see that he has some talent for drawing.
And he did go to art school in the comic books too.
Yeah. So when he goes back to be with Peggy, it's like, did Steve get a full-time job as a cartoonist? That would be the funniest shit ever. But yeah, man, I've already said it all. I absolutely love this movie. The score, the acting, I think it's all firing on all cylinders. And all of these movies came together to give us one of the greatest blockbusters ever fucking made, and that is Marvel's The Avengers. I have seen this film over 100 times. I shit you not. I've seen it 7 times in theaters, and the moment it came out on Blu-ray, I watched this film every single day for a month and a half, sometimes twice a day. This is also a film that I watch every single year, multiple times a year. I absolutely love this movie. It's 2.5 hours long, but it's perfection from beginning to end. The pacing is great. The transitions, the scene transitions are absolutely amazing. The last line that the last character says has something to do with the transition and the location of where another Avenger pops up, which is something that I noticed like on one of my subsequent rewatches years ago, just how well these scene transitions happen throughout the film. I love the sense of awe when Captain America sees the helicarrier for the very first time. I absolutely love that. I remember seeing that scene, and I didn't think of the helicarrier because in my youth, I'm used to the helicarrier being like a big blimp that kind of looks like a military blimp, right? So I didn't actually think, which makes sense in hindsight, that they would take an aircraft carrier and turn it into the helicarrier, right?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So yeah, there's so much that I have to say, but Vash, I want to start with you, and I want to get some of your favorite moments from the Avengers movie.
So perfectly transitioning to what James just said, because I love how Chris Evans, Steve Rogers talks to Phil Coulson like, I'm not gonna be that shocked and everything. And when he meets up with Bruce Banner, and when they go inside to the helicarrier, I think he bets with Phil Coulson about the $10 or
Nick Fury. Yeah.
Nick Fury, the $10. And then when it starts flying, he's like, here's the $10. And then Nick Fury just starts laughing about like, I got you then. So I love that type of chemistry and everything. One of my favorite line as well is when Hulk, gets thrown out and comes back in a little small motorcycle, very slow, nice entrance and everything. And then Chris like, hey, we need the green guy. And then he's like, I got you. And then just starts walking out like, hey, you want to know my secret? I'm always angry, and it just knocks the whole Jitari creature down with one punch. Literally comes out, bam! Literally is like, and I was like, all right, cool. That one punch knocked that whole thing, and it just flips in the back. So I was like, this is amazing. Like, it literally was nerdgasm of what it is, and perfectly said to transition to what Jon Schnepp always just said. Like, this was a sweaty moment to see this on screen of literally seeing the Avenger panel of what Josh Whedon did of Iron Man, Captain America, Black Widow, Hawkeye, and Hulk and Thor there, and the whole panel, the Avengers moment and the score popping up, like is one of the most score known.
Yeah, that score is iconic
of the MCU. Is iconic for that reason, and I love how it has evolved through the years, and people know it because of that scene, and amazing. I love it. I just love the chemistry between Hawkeye as well, because he's a dude with a bow and arrow, and literally just sitting on top on a rooftop, just literally just going through this like arrow there, arrow there, arrow there. I'm like, my boy, you didn't even look at how you shoot at the guy, and it just literally just kept going. I'm like, it's just the comedy aspect, because in the comics it's just like we know he's a skilled guy, but seeing it on screen, it's just happening like it's nothing. Like, yeah, I'm just throwing arrows, just hitting random people. It's just comedy for me.
I'll be honest, Jeremy Renner made me like Hawkeye. I was never the biggest Hawkeye guy because I'm more of an Oliver Queen guy, right? So I always thought that Hawkeye was fine in the comics. Like, I like that he's a great archer, but I mean, he ain't got shit on Oliver Queen, bro. So, but Jeremy Renner made me love Hawkeye on a completely different level. I love how he plays up just how great Hawkeye is at being able to hit any target. And this movie plays into it really well. I like when he's on, like, I think he's on a Quinjet or a helicopter or something, and then he uses the wind to perfectly position the arrow to blow up that part of the helicarrier. I love that scene. It's so good, man. Like, Jeremy Renner is amazing in this role, bro.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, you guys said it all. This is, in my opinion, a perfect movie. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. And for all the reasons that you guys mentioned, the Alan Silvestri score tied in with the dynamics between all the characters. Prior to this movie coming out, the only ensemble superhero films we'd gotten were the X-Men movies. And the last one we had gotten, Last Stand, was a total bomb. It was awful. So I was very cautious going into this movie, wondering if they were going to be able to pull off the ensemble superhero film, because it's tough. It's really tough. But because we had gotten all these other individual movies prior to them doing that, they didn't need to waste time on backstory, which I think is one of this movie's strengths. And, despite Joss Whedon's, what he does in his personal life, he's very strong when it comes to writing ensemble casts. Buffy, Angel, Firefly. Like before he took on this task of making the Avengers movie, he had proven that he was able to create strong character dynamics between people and make these characters feel real and alive. And he did that with the Avengers, which I was totally shocked. This was also one of those theater going experiences where you could like see things changing in the audience. Like this is one of those first moments where like people would cheer to the point where I couldn't hear what was being said in the film. And it just like evolved tenfold to by the time we got to Endgame, people are screaming. They're not even like cheering, but like screaming where you cannot hear the film. They became like concerts or like stadium events, and the cinema going experience just wasn't that yet at this point in time. So it's a really special thing. It's a proof of concept. If this movie hadn't worked, the rest of the MCU would have been done. This would have been the end, but that's why I love this movie so much, because it's firing on all cylinders, and it's doing everything that it can do at the very highest level. I fucking love this movie. It's great.
Yeah, man, this is like you already said, this is pretty much a perfect movie. Like watching it again today, it's like there is not a single shot that I don't like. There's not if I had to nitpick, right? Like if someone had to ask me, find something that's wrong with this movie, it would be the Black Widow warehouse fight where this guy pretty much gets knocked out by her hair. I've always thought that was fucking stupid. They do a different take, like make her do something else that knocks him out. Because when you look at it, it's just her hair that hits him in the face.
Is it supposed to be like a headbutt and she just didn't?
It's supposed to be a headbutt, but it's just her hair.
That's
you know
so
what I
funny.
mean? Like the only thing that hits his face is her hair.
I might need to rewatch that.
Yeah, I've seen it a billion times, and it's bugged me since day one in the theater.
I don't remember.
I'm like, the rest of this fight is great, but why that moment? Like, did you not see that looked stupid? But besides that, if I had to nitpick, that is the only thing. Vash, like you already alluded to, that 360 shot of all of the Avengers standing in the middle of New York with all of the Chitauri surrounding them, Cap giving everyone their duties. It was so fucking amazing. And then at the end, and Hulk, smash. Dude, I came. I'm telling you, there's so many moments in this movie that I absolutely fucking lost it. Go ahead.
I was gonna say one of my favorite scenes as well, like Nick Fury. He's the man that Tony have even said on in the whole helicarrier that this man has secrets and his secrets has secrets. So I love it. Once Phil Coulson died, rip, because if you guys have seen the films only, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. exists. Go watch that. It's it's entertaining.
Phil Coulson's dead, Vash.
But Nick Fury. Yeah, I know, sadly. But Nick Fury goes and grabs the Captain America cards that were never inside his vest and jacket and puts it with his blood and literally throws it to the table like, look at this shit, man. He died. What are you guys going to do about it? Knowing that this will actually turn the table, knowing that these people, these billionaire playboy philanthropists, this god, this superhuman soldier, this team that is so fucked up that could not work together, but he knew how to get to their heads and to their psyche to actually work them together because of one guy that has them all connected. What Chris mentioned earlier, the glue, and that was Phil Coulson, the Loki kill in the climax of the film, and that's where we got them to finally work together and actually have them as a team, the Avengers.
Yeah. Another one of my favorite moments is where Cap is fighting in the streets and Iron Man is flying around just shooting a bunch of different Chitauri, and then he lands, helps Cap fight off a few of them, and then he blasts the shield so that they can bounce off of it and kill the other Chitauri. Dude, another moment where I was absolutely losing my mind. That third act has so many amazing moments. Watching
There's
Thor.
this sweet like splash panel shot where it follows all of them through New York as they're involved in their individual fights.
Yeah.
It's like a splash page. It's awesome, like a one shot. Very
Yeah,
cool.
man. We could sit here and we could gush about so many incredible moments. Another one of my favorite moments. Cap is standing on top of the car and he's giving the instructions to the police officers. Like, who the fuck is this guy? And then they see Cap take out the Chitauri, and he's like, I need men in these buildings. just get right on it, man. Like that was such a funny moment. Love that, man. Like there's so many moments.
I was gonna say I love how our boy Captain America literally fights Thor and Iron Man when they first meet each other, like a god and Iron Man, and like both of them go at it. I was like, okay, cool. And then Cap is like, yo, guys, stop fighting. Like, we're all on the same team. And like Cap is trying to have them work together as a team, but it just doesn't work out. Like, damn, like these two idiots and everything. And I love how Tony like meets him. And Steve Rogers like, oh, you are Howard's son and everything, and like, oh, you are the guy that my father, spending more time on it instead of me. So I just love that type of chemistry and those type of little jabs at each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Any other favorite moments that you guys want to call out?
Oh man,
because there really are like a lot of great moments.
The whole movie.
When
anytime Loki's on screen,
Hulk,
bro.
I was gonna say when Hulk was a dick and just punched Thor on when Hulk just punched Thor, like, you know what? I'm tired of you. It just punches it like Hulk smash. So like that was entertaining.
Dude, that fight between Thor and Hulk in the base or in the helicarrier, that's an awesome fight. The way that the shot slows down when Thor catches Mjolnir and hits Hulk in the jaw was so fucking cool. I remember that being like a big moment in the theater when people like freaked out.
I think we're so spoiled at this point because when you really sit down and think about it, we just saw Thor and Hulk fight live action, and then we saw Hulk try to pick up Mjolnir.
Right.
Like, these small things are like some of my favorite moments ever, dude. Like, just the Thor movie. I forgot to mention this when we were talking about our positives for that movie. The first time seeing Mjolnir on screen, the first time seeing Thor on screen, live action, the first time seeing Odin, the first time seeing Asgard. I feel like we take for granted all of these amazing things that happened throughout this movie. Like, again, I'll talk about that scene again. We got to see a team up moment between Iron Man and Captain America. I got to see Captain America throw Black Widow into the air so that she can then hold on to one of the Chitauri, like, flying glider things, and then she takes out one of the Chitauri and goes after Loki. Like, there's so many insane moments that happened in this movie that I thought I would never ever see when I was a kid. Like, I love this movie.
Teenage Chris never would have expected Hollywood to go in this direction, but it's all thanks to Iron Man, right?
And then another thing, we get to see Loki holding a staff that contains the Mind Stone, and he got that staff from Thanos, who sent him with the Chitauri army to bring him back the Tesseract from the Avengers. Listen to what I just said, dude. As a comic book nerd, it's crazy.
Yeah, grandmas know who Thanos is now. That's weird.
Yes. And my favorite moment is when Hulk literally grabs Loki and literally just treats him like a toddler. Janky, like, when he said, I'm our god, and literally just, you're like, you know what, bitch, shut the fuck up.
God,
goes
you
left, right,
creature.
left, right. And like, yo, my dude, shut the fuck up. Like, that was just entertaining. Like, watching the films again with my fiance, it just makes you entertaining. Like, seeing her watch the film to just be entertained by the MCU, seeing Chris Evans like play that Thor, and Tony Stark, Iron Man, like seeing these characters and her being entertainment, like it gives me a different perspective, but more of what James brought up, a different type of appreciation to what we see on screen as what we read in the comic books and what we read in the cartoons. I mean, watching the cartoons and see it on screen, like we take it for granted. Like these type of things wouldn't have happened if it didn't succeed. And what we have now, like what Chris, but like my family knows about Thanos, so to know that, oh, who's the purple guy? So like at least it's now known. Like there's cartoon, there is freaking figures of Thanos. Before, like it would be 1 in a million to try to find some type of figure, and probably it would not even be, look that good. Now there's all different types of figures of all different types of characters, and it'll be more in the future. So, like I appreciate these type of movies for what they started, because look what we have now.
Yeah, I do have one other small little nitpick, and then I do want to talk about Loki real quick, and then we can do final thoughts, do our ranking,
Yeah.
and wrap up. But another nitpick that I actually do have with this Avengers movie is when Hulk lands, right, and he turns back into Banner. How did the security guy know that he would transform back into a human? Because he gives this line that says, "Yeah, I figured I would wait until you shrunk back into a normal size." How the fuck does he know that?
I have no idea. That is a weird line.
Yeah, I was watching
That
it
makes
today,
no
I'm like,
sense. Thanks for ruining Avengers for me,
I'm like,
James. Jesus.
How the fuck would he even know that he would turn back into a human? It's not like
Breaking
this
fourth wall,
information
maybe.
is.
Who knows?
But for who though? You know what I mean? Like
I
we
don't-
already know that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. Like there is no need to break. And then to break the fourth wall would be that person looking into the camera. You know what I mean? And literally acknowledging to the camera what's happening. So it's like,
Yeah.
how the fuck does he even know? But anyways, that was another small little nitpick that I thought of. But I do want to talk about Loki, and then we can wrap up. This is Loki yet again trying to seek his father's approval. He's trying to prove to Odin, "Hey, Dad, look, I can
be a
rule-
king.
I can be a king. It's okay. You can let me run Asgard. I am more fit than Thor to rule somewhere. If I can rule Earth, then I can rule Asgard." So I see that again, that he's just in this place where he thinks that he's doing the right thing for himself, but it's not. It's the worst decisions possible. And I love complicated characters like that really think that what they're doing is the right thing, but it's not. Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think Loki's excellent. You know, up until Eric Killmonger, he was the only strong villain that we'd gotten in the MCU. All the other ones were pretty flat, or they died immediately in whatever movie they were in. But yeah, he's the most emotionally complex character that we had gotten up until this point. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's get final thoughts. Vash, I want to start with you.
I love what Avengers brought up. Loki, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, like all these characters come into a consummation of one film and actually make it sense. We see the introduction of the higher council of Shield as well with Nick Fury, the whole bringing a nuke to New York City. Nick said, "No, we cannot do this. They will lose a lot of lives." Tony decided to take it up to himself to bring that nuke, and that's what continued the PTSD in the next film with Age of Ultron that we'll be talking about next week and everything like that. So I love how this film introduced a lot of the characters. It did not feel like, yes, Hawkeye got left-handed with his character, being brainwashed and everything, but we did see his skill set, like we didn't see in Thor, but we did see in this film. We did see the chemistry of the past story of Black Widow and Hawkeye, of how they've always been a dual type of dynamic before as characters that we have known in the comics and cartoons. So to see this grand scale of a movie, I adore. The whole cinematography, the writing was great. The directing, to some people wasn't, to some people was great. So overall, this film I enjoyed for what it was. It was fantastic and was such an amazing, sweaty, nerdgasm type of film to actually can't wait to have a commentary with James and for us to be pausing a lot and talking about this film, because this film has so many high moments and very low moments, like very low, but higher moments like 95% out of the 5%, and that to me is such a great thing to talk about film.
Yeah. And how would you rank the MCU Phase 1 movies?
Ooh, definitely Iron Man, Avengers, Captain America, then Iron Man, no, Thor, then Iron Man 2 and Incredible Hulk.
Okay. Chris, let me get your final thoughts and then give me your ranking on the MCU Phase 1.
This movie is always going to be incredibly important to me, just for what it did to cinema. Like I said, growing up as a teenager liking comic books was hard. Trying to explain to friends that comic books aren't just for kids, but can also be for, adults.
Right.
I don't think kids are going to ever be able to appreciate how hard that was, because now the Marvel Cinematic Universe is just part of the mainstream. This is like, it's cool and okay to like these things. So I'm incredibly appreciative for how the MCU and Phase 1 and Avengers specifically has kind of shifted the perception of what these characters are to the greater world that we live in.
Yeah.
So yeah, hugely grateful to these movies, and it's always going to be one that I cherish. How would I rank these movies? Okay. Captain America, the first Avenger, Avengers, Iron Man 2, Thor, The Incredible Hulk. Did I forget one? No. Right?
I think you hit it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good ranking. It's pretty similar to mine. There's one little variance, but I love this Avengers movie. Like I said before, I've seen it over 100 times. I was beyond obsessed with this movie. Up until the Avengers, I thought The Dark Knight was just the greatest thing to ever happen. And then Marvel The Avengers happened, and then it was like, man, this is just the greatest thing to ever fucking exist. Like,
sorry to interrupt, but can we just take a moment to say, like, what a fucking awesome summer 2008 was?
Right?
Right? We mentioned it earlier, but like getting Iron Man in May,
yeah,
and then The Dark Knight in July.
Yeah.
Like, when I saw Iron Man, I was like, this is the best comic book movie we're ever gonna get. And then The Dark Knight came out, and I was like, oh, this is the best comic book movie we're ever gonna get. I was just like, what is happening this summer?
Yeah, and they're still in my top 2 favorite,
golden,
top 15 greatest comic book movies ever made.
Definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, man, I love this movie, seen it a billion times because I was just absolutely obsessed with every moment of this movie. This was me as a kid watching the Avengers on a splash page in the comics to seeing it live action for the first time, and I absolutely lost it. Getting that scene at the end, I can't remember the henchman's name, but Thanos' henchman, where he says to go after the Avengers, to whatever he says, to quarrel with them is to court death or something like that. And then Thanos just turns around and smiles. It was one of the greatest moments of my life,
dude.
bro.
It's the big Thanos grin too.
Yeah.
Like, it was perfect.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know, the guy that played Thanos in that movie was one of Crossbones' henchmen in Captain America Civil War. Fun fact.
I didn't know that. That's sick.
Yeah,
didn't know that. That's
the tall black dude that's holding the vial of radium, whatever it is. Like, that's the guy that played Thanos in the Avengers
That's
movie.
awesome.
Yeah. So I absolutely love this movie. Love MCU Phase 1. Can't wait to talk about the rest. My ranking will be Captain America the First Avenger, Captain America the First Avenger, Iron Man, the Avengers, Thor, Iron Man 2, Incredible Hulk. That would have to be my ranking.
So we all have the last 3 the same, just the first 3 different.
Yeah.
Yeah, those movies are just really, really special to me, and I'm really glad that we're doing this. It's actually going to work out perfect. We're doing Phase 1 today. Next week, we're doing Phase 2, and then we're going to do Phase 3 Part 1, Phase 3 Part 2, and then the week immediately after that will be the very first episode of Loki. So we've planned this out pretty well to cover all of the Infinity Saga. We've already talked about the Falcon and Winter Soldier. We've already talked about WandaVision. So by the time Loki comes out on C4SVillains, we would have talked about every single MCU property that exists. And I don't know about you guys, but that makes me really, really proud.
That's super cool.
In this platform. Yeah, man.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. So any final thoughts on MCU Phase 1 before we give our plugs and wrap up for the night?
So
I'm good.
Yeah, I think we said like everything we could possibly say about MCU Phase 1. However, there is one thing that I want to mention.
Yeah.
In regards to Loki coming out. Right before we started recording, I don't know if you guys saw, but IGN reported that Marvel What If is going to be officially coming out in August. So
Yes.
There you go. We
I
got a
saw.
release date for Marvel What If.
Sweet. That's awesome. 'Cause I can't
MCU
wait for
tie-in.
that series. Because I've always been curious to see what Howard would be like as Iron Man, right? Like if Howard was in Tony's position and he was able to have and use all of the tech that Tony had access to, what would Howard be able to do with all of that? Getting to see Peggy as Captain Britain, like all of these different things, like watching T'Challa be Star-Lord. That's going to be very interesting. Marvel Zombies, all of that shit. So we have.
I think
a
Chadwick
lot of...
Boseman is also playing T'Challa in this series. I think this is actually technically his last performance, which is awesome.
Well,
This was his last role. This was.
I'm sorry, dude. I didn't mean to
this
make
was
you sad. It
confirmed.
should be a
This was
happy
his
thing
last role.
because we get one more thing with him in it. You know.
I know. Yeah.
But it
Very
is
true.
sad.
That's very true.
Yeah. But this was a really, really fun episode. Like, I love talking about these movies, especially talking about these movies with you guys. So, Chris, I'll start with you. Where can the people find you online?
Online, in terms of our podcast, Pop-O-Holics, you can find us on any of your favorite podcast players. We are a pop culture show where on Mondays we talk about the weekly Hollywood pop culture industry news. And then on Wednesdays, we always theme our months. So we have a main episode this month. We are theming our months around Steven Spielberg. We're doing a Steven Spielberg spotlight. So I highly recommend going to check out those episodes. We've already covered Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And this coming week, we are covering Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is a lot of fun. So head over to Twitter at Pop-O-Holics. You can follow us there. Me personally, you can find me on Twitter at Chris Conkling, and I'm usually talking about all things nerdy, like, you know, comic books, television, movies, collectibles, all that shit. So I'm excited to have you over there as well.
Make sure you guys are following Pop-O-Holics. These guys put out so much fucking content. They have the weekly upload on Mondays. They do Throwback Thursdays. They also have the main show on Wednesdays. And then on Sundays, they upload the video version of just the news segment of the weekly upload. So these guys are putting in a lot of fucking work at Pop-O-Holics, and they inspire me to want to create more, and I hope I do the same thing for you guys, because I love
100%
talking to you guys.
We are so grateful for your friendship and your collaboration, man. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, man, appreciate that. Vash, where can the people find you?
I also want to agree with what James just said, because I have done a couple of works with Pop-O-Holics, and it's been an honor to work with them all the time. And it has been a pleasure to be a guest on their show. And they're such great people. I wish they would have their main show as well on the YouTube. Can we see them in the future? Because I've been watching their show.
You know,
on Sunday
Christian
as well
did
on video.
say,
yeah, no, maybe steps.
The other day we were recording our video, and I'm pretty sure it already went out, but Christian said all it would take is one person to email us at popaholics@gmail.com. at popaholicscast@gmail.com. I'm sorry. And say that they want to see the entire show in the video format, and he would do it or consider doing it.
All right. So I guess I'm going to be emailing from my
popaholicscast@gmail.com.
account.
Email us.
Yeah, I'm going to have
I'm going to have that tonight. And
yeah, I'm going to have all of those links in the comment section below. So make sure you guys email them, because I'm a huge fan of the show, and I would love to see these guys on video, because being able to actually see their chemistry, because hearing it is great, and they do such a great job on the Only podcast, but watching them interact with each other, it's fucking gold, and you will not be disappointed. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave them a comment on iTunes as well. They will read it on the podcast, so do that as well. I support these guys. They are, much like Anime Lately, they are another brother network. Too careful for spoilers, so I will always promote you guys here on the show. Vass, did you have anything else you wanted to mention?
I highly agree with that as well, because that's how I watch my podcast on the video platform always, because I just like to see the actual chemistry on screen. But you guys can follow me always at Legendary Vash on Twitter, IG, join the Discord of C4S, of Anime Lately. Definitely check out Show Anime Lately podcast. We're about to reach 100 episodes this coming June, and we are doing Shonen Ronin episode 4, where we're talking about Hardboiled Cop, Kaiju number 8, and My Hero Academia this coming Sunday. So definitely stay tuned if you want to hear our reviews of those three series and those 3 chapters. So definitely stay tuned for that, and definitely check out C4SVillains on the podcast side everywhere. And don't forget to continue subscribing to us. It's gladly appreciated.
Yeah,
dude, congrats on being so close to the 100th episode. That's so exciting.
It's wild. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys can follow me all over social media at JB Exclusive, and of course at C4SVillains. If you want to find out absolutely everything that we're doing, go to carefulforspoilers.com. You get links to the Patreon, all of our social media. We also write gaming articles, movie articles, TV, anime, whatever. Check it all out on the website. Keep it locked to C4SVillains every single Friday. Share it with your friends. Make sure you guys are subscribed, sharing the videos, because like I said, we got a lot of lit content coming for you guys in the next coming months. We're doing the entire Infinity Saga. We're going to be talking about Loki. And as soon as the Loki series is done, we're also going to be talking about all of the nostalgic animated series from your childhood. We're talking Gargoyles, Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man the Animated Series, Static Shock, you name it, we're doing it. So we have so much great content for you guys. So make sure you stay tuned, and we will see you guys on the next one.